Welcome, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. What's going on, G Power? Good to see you here. All right, great. You guys see my magic microphone here? See how it's shimmering? Got a magic microphone. It's good to be here. It's been quite a while since I've done a live video. And back in the American territories, I was in Colombia and South America for about 6 months and just got back. So it's good to be back. I figured jump on here. For those of you who don't have other Saturday evening plans and you want to spend a little time together. Purpose, of course, is also to do Q&A, questions and answers. So I love answering your questions. Hopefully you guys have picked up on that. I love answering your questions. Now, sometimes I'll be hard on you if I feel like you could ask a better question. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate your questions. I actually do. And as an educator, if you want to be an educator, you're going to always value the fact that people are asking questions. So I would never fault that. So feel free to ask questions. We probably have some new folks who haven't joined us here. I'm trying out this green screen, by the way, and it's got some weird artifacts, so hopefully it's not going to annoy anyone. We'll try to just roll with it. One of the effects is the shimmering microphone, but I actually like that. I think it's kind of cool, so it doesn't bother me. So we have one deeply ingrained pessimist in the room already. Deeply ingrained pessimism. Freedom doesn't exist in America. Well, actually, since you put it all capital letters, if you're referring to the corporation called America, yeah, I mean, it's a corporation. It's not really, freedom's not going to be applicable. So what topics do you cover? So you're probably brand new. That's totally cool. Definitely invite people here who are brand new. So the Freedom Studio, we are a private educational organization. And basically, well, freedom is what it's all about. But, from a practical perspective, we focus on natural law. That's the foundational work that we teach. And then on top of that, we start to look at how we can start to use what some people call the matrix or the systems in our favor, instead of having it basically control us. Because the system's really designed to control our behavior. It's really mind control, because in order to control someone's behavior, you have to control the way they think. So basically, that's why we start with natural law, because natural law is the shortest path to freeing your mind. And then on top of that, we start to look at more practical strategies like, okay, how do I get out from under the what I call the oppression of the public? And that has a lot to do with equity, which is a great mindset to have in general for life in general, not just public affairs. And we also look at private trust and a few other strategies on how to basically how to implement freedom. And it becomes an aggregate function because as each of us individually become sovereign, the aggregate result is more freedom for everyone. That's where I'm coming from. So I'm always working on myself first, of course, first and foremost. Then I share what I know to be true, help other people to master those skills, and then it gets better for everyone. So that's what we cover here at a very high level. So all the curriculum is built around that, and there's modules about health and wellness because you have to take care of your health. If you're not going to be sovereign if you're not able to master your own health. Your body, I mean, you can think of it as your temple. You can think of it as the physical manifestation of you, but we're in the physical reality. So if you're not taking good care of this and this, you're not going to be the cause point for freedom. It's really that simple. Weeping Willow 2 says, I'm blind. Okay. Well, hopefully it sounds like you have found ways to interact despite being blind. So that's great. That's great to have you here. Obviously, you're listening to us and you probably have a way to type out your thoughts to share with us. I will just say that everything is coming through in all capital letters. So it does make it seem like you're shouting. So if you have control over that, I would dial that back a bit and try to use mixed case. G Power says, freedom, it exists within the mind. Yeah, it starts with your mind because the all is mind. The universe is mental. The first of the 7 Hermetic principles, the first principle. It's all mind. It's all about your state of mind. That's the causal part of reality. You are co-creating reality because of what you think and how you act on your thoughts. So yeah, if you want to be free, it's got to start in the mind. 100%. 100%. That's great. So start typing your questions. I love to answer your questions. And let's have a conversation. Let's make it interactive. So fairly don't recall when I sub you. That's cool. Everybody comes at the right time. By holding folks accountable for their tyrannical behavior. I'm not sure what that was in response to, but you've got to start by holding yourself accountable first. The problem is everybody's good at pointing fingers outward, and the system loves that, by the way. That's why there's so much narrative from a lot of these famous so-called alternative commentators, not to name any names necessarily, but that's why they've got you, let's talk about something contemporary, like the whole Trump-Musk, feud, in quotation marks. This is all designed to get you to pick a side. Hey, whose side are you on, Trump or Musk? Oh, they used to be together. Now they're against each other. Man, people are falling for that or haven't even passed the first bail yet. You haven't even passed the first bail. So go ahead and comment your questions or any updates. Let's hear what you guys have to share. So how can freedom exist since the justice system is corrupt? Well, you're making like a causal link there. So if a justice system is corrupt, that causes the fact that there cannot be freedom. So I would question your line of thinking there. Can the justice system, which is an effect of a cause, can it be a cause? I mean, it has some influence, of course, but what you're not getting, I think, and a lot of people still struggle with, is we are the cause point. Essentially, those who manipulate human behavior, they are creating reality through people like, I'm going to just say people like you or others. Maybe it's not you, but folks out there who just go along with the program. I mean, it's programming. Okay. So they're creating the reality based on that. So you're probably not even considering that you could be the cause point. And I get sometimes that people are really down in their situation and they can't get, they don't want to be the cause point. So go ahead and post your questions in the chat, and let's hear what you guys have going on. I'll give you guys a second to compose your questions. In the meantime, I'll just mention that the next free live workshop is going to be on Sunday, June 15th. So a week from tomorrow at 11 a.m. And we'd love to have you join us. It's absolutely free to attend. You're going to pay for your attendance by spending the 4 to 6 hours with us that it takes to do the workshop. Those who are aware that, you're going to have to make an investment in yourself in order to upgrade not only your own life, but to help upgrade life, the reality for all of us, it's going to be a good investment of your time. We had a great attendance the last time in May. It was about 180 people. And yeah, we'd love to have you guys with us. Let's see. So if the media is that a leading question, G Power? Are you trying to set up the conversation? Are you trying to set it up, guide us in a particular way? So if the media narrative is for distraction, which it is, what are we distracted from knowing? Well, I'll give you my opinion. Again, everything I share is just my opinion, so I don't want you to believe anything I say. You're free to think whatever you want. Basically, hang on one second. Okay. So we had someone trolling the chat, and I'm all about having opposing viewpoints, but we don't need trolls. So if the media is for distraction, speaking of distraction, by the way, and that's a common strategy that trolls will get sent in, and I'm not even saying that they're sent in by a government agency. It's almost like the system itself is designed to create trolls and send them in at the right moment. So I don't, that doesn't bother me, but of course I don't want to be distracted. So speaking of distractions, to get to this very important question, what are they distracting from? Well, in my opinion, it's the truth of natural law and, the true nature of reality, the nature of ourselves, our ability to co-create reality, all the spiritual laws that are in effect and are applying to everyone, including the master controllers, if you want to call them that. The truth about the fact that morality is not a religious concept, it's an objective science. There's an objective, scientifically verifiable, completely valid, and also intuitively understood difference between right and wrong. And when you can master that, it actually, the mastery of that knowledge actually generates more freedom. So of course they don't want us to unlock that key, so they have to distract us from that as well. But really anything that's a true principle is the system is designed to keep you from learning it. And that's why in schools you're never taught what to think. I'm sorry, you're never taught how to think, you're taught what to think. Comment in the chat if you learned in high school or earlier, anytime up until high school, if you ever were taught the trivium as part of your curriculum. Just go ahead and comment in the chat if you were ever taught the trivium. I'd love to hear of that if someone was in public school. Comment if you were meant to taught the trivium. I'd love to see one person who says yes in a public school, not a private school, in a public school. But actually in private schools, it's probably not very well taught either. I don't really know. G-Power, you like that? I know I'm a little bit delayed in responding, but comment your questions below in the chat, wherever you're watching this. Comment your questions, share, just so I know you're there. This is meant to be interactive. It's not just me talking at you. So I'd love to hear what you guys have. Love to hear your questions. What are you up to? For those of you who have been following our curriculum, I'd love to hear an update from you. And really any question. There are better questions and better formulated questions, but I want to encourage you to ask your questions, because that's how you're gonna learn. And when you're asking, you are as king. Okay, so you're stepping into your sovereignty. When we study equity, one of the things you learn about equity is we're the ones always asking the questions. So the key is just to learn to ask better questions. Just checking in with you guys here. Okay, some people said no when it comes to civics and, the trivium. What is the trivium, by the way? So I have a question for you. What is the trivium? Go ahead, and I want to see if anybody's caught up on their study. What is the trivium? Go ahead and comment wherever you're watching this. What is the trivium? What is the trivium? I'll go ahead and write the question in the chat just to give you guys a visual reference. What is the trivium? Go ahead and comment. What is the trivium? What are your thoughts on Real ID? In terms of what specifically? I mean, what do I think of it? I mean, that's a very, very general question. If you could narrow that down a little bit, that'd be helpful. Speaking of IDs, though, I just booked a consultation with the Bad Wolf, James Lovett. I haven't spoken to him yet. It'll be the first time I'm meeting with him. I've been following his work for some time now. So shout out to James C. Lovett, aka the Bad Wolf, because I want to pick his brain about the passport, the national passport process, which I have not done, but I'm considering doing. But I'm going to ask him for his opinion on it privately, and then I'm going to make my decision how to what I'm going to do there. But I want to take advantage of the fact that I'm back in the American territories to, since I'm not traveling internationally, it might be a good moment to work on that. But again, I'm going to wait to speak with the Bad Wolf and hear his opinion, and then just incorporate that into, what I'm going to do next. So sometimes it's good to meet with others in consultation and just, from their own experience. Disciple of the Messiah 1 as opposed to 2. So not Disciple of the Messiah number 2, but the first one. Peace and grace, family. It's good to have you with us. Good to have you with us. Trivia is on my to learn list. What is the trivium? What is the trivium? Would you like me to explain to you on this live what the trivium is? Would that be helpful? So let me know. I'm happy to do it. It doesn't really take a lot of time to explain it. But let me know what it is, or if you want me to give you the answer. I wanted to give people a chance to respond before I actually explain what it is. And this is something, by the way, you can teach probably to a 5 to 7-year-old. I mean, I'm not sure everybody's a little different. So maybe some 7-year-olds will get it, and some it might be too early for them. I don't know, but I don't think there's any too early age to teach the trivium, in my opinion, at least to the level that they can grasp the concepts. So this is a life skill that you can learn from early on. So what is the trivium? What is the trivium? Go ahead and comment. What is the trivium? What is the trivium? Wow, you guys are quiet. Disciple of Messiah, Bad Wolf. Yeah, he's got some great content. Go check him out. Yeah, he's very diligent, very very thorough. There's a lot of great. There are other great educators and content creators out there. So we want to give them their due. Okay, no one has all the answers. Yellowhammer 44. Do you think it will be mandatory? Yeah, I mean it is already mandatory for international travel, as far as I know. I must have already had it because the passport I already had for years didn't have an issue, and I think the same with the driver's license. I would imagine if I did the national passport process, that passport would also apply. I mean, these are all, you're interacting with the public when you go through these systems. That's how it's all set up. Like, you're interfacing with the public. Now, you're still a private man or woman, but when you interact with these systems, you're acting like you're essentially manipulating your public side. Okay, which is what some people call the straw man or the ens legis. But you're basically you're interacting with the system through that avatar, almost like playing a game. Okay, and when you start to look at it more of a game, you can start to take control of the game, because if you're playing a game and you don't even realize you're playing a game, the other players are going to walk all over you. But when you know you're playing a game, you start to know how the rules are, you start to gain control, and you can actually learn to master the game. So that's kind of how I look at it. So what is the trivium? What is the trivium? No one has answered that question so far, and that's a little bit disturbing, to be honest with you. It's a little bit disconcerting. Okay, did you want me to tell you, to explain to you just in a brief way, kind of briefly introduce you to the trivium? Would you like me to do that? And I'm not ragging on you, G Power, or people like you, because this is it. This is the situation that we've created over a long period of time, and our parents were involved in that, and on and on. So yeah, I mean, it's concerning. Yeah, I mean, we have the power collectively to put a stop to all of this, systems of control, collectively, because we're collectively consenting, right? It's an aggregate function. So, there is a way out of the cage, and that is to master, know thyself, master natural law, which is what we teach at the Freedom Studio. Step into your sovereignty, activate your sovereignty, and when more of us do that, we're going to have collective power to shift the whole reality away from systems of control, right? It's not going to happen by protesting what's currently manifested, because collectively we're all consenting to that aggregately. I'm not necessarily saying that every individual is, but we are together. We're consenting to a lot of things that we could say no to. Okay, so the power of the word no. No has been called the lost word. People are so afraid to say no or to be controversial. I have no problem saying no. I say no all the time. I say no to myself. I say no to the people who work with us at the Freedom Studio when necessary. Not every time, of course. I say no to people I interact with when it's appropriate. We should have no problem saying no and just not have it be a big deal. There's a lot of power in no. Okay, it's not necessarily, it's not really a great thing to be a yes man or a yes woman. Okay. So nobody's nobody has explained what the trivium is, which is again pretty shocking. Nobody's explaining what the trivium is, and no one has asked me to explain it. Are you guys awake? Are you guys with me? Should I bang on the microphone just to make sure you're paying attention? This is for your benefit. This is for all of us, but it's for your benefit educationally. So, would you like me to explain to you what the trivium is? Go ahead and comment. What is the trivium? What is the trivium? Okay, Grudge asked, what is the trivium? Assuming that I want you to explain what the trivium is. So let's explain it. Okay. So the trivium is basically a method of thinking which allows you to more readily distinguish, to discern reality, and specifically to discern the difference between what is true and what is not true. Okay. So another way to say the same thing is you become foolproof from being deceived much more when you can employ the trivium. You can't really be fooled. You can't be duped as much. Can't be conned or scammed as easily. You have much more mental self-defense. You don't fall for things as easily. You're more discerning. So it's a technology, if you want to put it that way, but it's entirely a mental technology. You don't actually need to buy anything to learn the trivium. That's part of what makes it so powerful. You don't have to buy anything. Okay. So as the name suggests, it comes from the Latin trivium. Tri, T-R-I, is a prefix which means three. Tri, tree, three. And vium sounds like via, which is way or path. Okay, a way or a path. So trivium can be translated as a triple path or a three-way path or the three-way path. Okay, so the trivium. All right, so if it's a three-way path, what is the three ways of the path or three parts, and path to what? Well, it's a path to understanding, to it's like the word educate comes from educare, to lead out of, to lead out into the light. Okay, so it's a way to gain knowledge and understanding. It's a way to discern reality and therefore make better choices, which is very important. Okay, so the first phase of the trivium is called knowledge. Knowledge. In the classic interpretation of the trivium, it's called grammar. Grammar. And in a more modern interpretation, which is more like computational science, it can be called input. Okay, so knowledge, otherwise known as grammar, otherwise known as input. As the name suggests, in this first phase of the trivium, you are acquiring new knowledge and new information, or you're incorporating and taking in new information, new knowledge. Okay, so that's what you do. So the first step of the trivium is you take in the knowledge. Now, it's very important. You haven't done anything else. You haven't made a decision about that knowledge. You haven't decided anything yet. You've just taken it in. So let's use a contemporary example. What would be a good contemporary example? There's so many things going on. It's hard to come up with an example from so many options. Let's say someone comes along and says, you need to wear a mask, a face mask, in order to protect yourself from a virus. You need to wear a face mask in order to protect yourself from some type of pathogen. Okay. So the knowledge you just gained is that someone has come along and given you a request, or maybe even demanded that you do something, and they're claiming that by doing that, you're going to achieve a certain outcome. Okay. So it's the knowledge phase. The next phase of the trivium is called understanding. Understanding. So you've taken in this knowledge, you haven't immediately either accepted or rejected it, because you're not acting naive on the one hand, you're not being rigidly skeptical on the other. You're kind of in the middle. So it's like, let me just take this information in, and now I'm going to process it. So processing it in this case, in the case of the example, would be going back and referencing what you already know, or what you can learn about that situation. That's called understanding. Okay? Understanding. In the classical interpretation, it's called logic. It's called logic because now you're applying your logical, or you're applying reason. But the truth is, you're also applying intuition. So in a way, that doesn't really encompass intuition, because you also draw on intuition to tap into that store of knowledge and understand previous understanding, so you can make better decisions. And in the future, in the more modern interpretation of the trivium, it's called processing. So now the computer or the system is processing the information that was inputted. Okay, so the second phase again is understanding, also known as logic in the classical interpretation, and processing. Okay, so the first stage, knowledge. Second stage, understanding. Okay, now we get to the third stage. The third stage is called wisdom. Wisdom, because wisdom is actually a correct understanding applied through action. So when you understand things correctly and you make good choices, you're being wise. Okay? You're being wise. You are wise. And the better decisions you make based on actual understanding or proper understanding, the wiser you're considered. Okay? So wisdom. In the classical interpretation, it's called rhetoric, because you are creating reality, you are speaking it into existence, right? Reality is spoken into existence. So you are putting it out there. And in the modern interpretation, it's called output, because now the system has taken the information in, it's processed it, and now output. Something's being done as a result. Okay? And the more aligned with truth that processing is, the more accurate the conclusions become, the better the results. And if it's not great, or if there's room for improvement, we can go back and iterate. So, I didn't make the best choice. I experienced some negative consequence. I'm not so rigid that I can't admit perhaps I was wrong, or perhaps I lacked some understanding. So let me go back and reevaluate my decision. Let me go back and reevaluate the knowledge, take in potentially some new knowledge, go back and apply reasoning to it, apply my intuition, and then come up with potentially a different outcome. I do this all the time. I have no problem at all admitting if I was wrong about something, or if I was missing part of the story, and it makes sense to go back and learn it. Right? Now, when I was younger, I was extremely arrogant in that regard. I couldn't be bothered with being told I was wrong. So I had to upgrade my own consciousness to recognize that hey, I don't have all the answers. And I don't, I can't engage in magical thinking, where I think if I just think something is true, boop, hey, that's the reality. Like some New Agers will, New Age thinking will try to get you to think. So Christopher has already said several times that when he searched for the trivium, it came up with a band, which I'm sure it did. So Christopher, let's see if you're thinking. Why do you think that is, that when you put in Google or most search engines, why do you think that the band comes up first and there's almost no hits about the classical trivium that I'm explaining to you. Why do you think that is, Christopher? Why is that? Or anyone can answer if Christopher is not ready to answer that. Why is that? Why is that? Why is it that when you search for the trivium in most search engines, it's just going to come back with the band and probably not a lot else? Why is that? Chad says, love the content, David. Well, thank you, Chad. I appreciate that very much. I am always grateful for you and others who express me feedback. If you don't like something, I'm also happy with hearing that too. I'm happy for a respectful disagreement, but it's certainly great to hear from you and others that you're getting value from it. I really do appreciate that. So thank you for that. Thank you for your participation. Real Estate Ron is answering the question that I asked Christopher and all of you, which is, why do you think it is that, number one, they're not teaching the trivium, certainly not in public school. And when you even try to search for it online in this day and age when you can really find answers to pretty much everything online, typically you're going to get a band. Okay. And it's because and we should probably explain who they is, they don't want us thinking logically. Well, the simplest form of they is you can call it the adversarial consciousness. So the consciousness that manifests in many different ways in our reality, that's essentially opposing, attempting to hold us back, hold back our development spiritually, physically, otherwise, just keep us enslaved. But it's because natural law is in effect, it's basically allowing us to enslave ourselves, because that's really the only way it can be done under natural law. So part of their strategy is just to hide information, hide knowledge from us, or occult it. That's what the word occult means, as Chad's pointing out. They occult hidden knowledge. Yeah, so occulted or hidden knowledge. And they just hide it from you, right? That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're keeping it hidden. But it's funny because they occult it, but it's right there. I mean, we live in the post-apocalyptic era. Apocalypse means the removal of the veil. Everything's already been revealed, folks. I'm not sure if you guys have been paying attention, but everything's already available at your fingertips. You can literally find all of this knowledge at your fingertips. And I can validate this. There's probably a small subset of certain deeper truths that are a little more inaccessible, but all the most important principles are readily accessible. It's just they distract you. Okay, so that's how they keep it hidden. They either distract you or they make you feel like you're dumb for looking into it. Like, oh, stop being such a sovereign citizen. Stop being such a conspiracy theorist. And they create these mind triggers so that you just don't want to look at it. So I am Kenrick. Have you ever heard of equitable subrogation? I have, but I haven't really studied that deeply. I mean, I've been studying equity since September of last year, but most of my focus has been on other processes. I haven't really gone deeply into subrogation. So I don't really know a lot about that compared with some of the other equitable processes like acceptance, rescission, redemption. But even redemption, I just know it kind of, intellectually, but it's not something I've even employed. So, but there are folks who know about that, obviously, who know a lot more than I do. So now that I've explained to you what the trivium is, can you write in one sentence, what is the trivium? Let's see who's been paying attention. We've got 17 people on the live here. It's not a lot, but we've got some folks here. jumped up to 19. So now that I've explained to you what the trivium is, what is the trivium? What is the trivium? Inner thought says, how would you use your remedy? Could you ask your question in a better way? Could you formulate a more concise question? Because it's very vague. How would you use your remedy? To do what? It's such a broad question. I don't even know what you're asking. It's almost like you're using those words, to sound like you know what you're talking about, but I don't really know what you're trying to ask me. So try to formulate a better question. So what is the trivium? What is the trivium? Now that I've already explained it to you, what is the trivium? What is the trivium? Real Estate Ron says 3 pathways: input, knowledge, and wisdom. You're getting close, Ron. It's if you're going to stick to one paradigm, because there's a couple different ways to explain it, it would be knowledge, understanding, and then wisdom. Knowledge first, understanding, and then wisdom. Okay, so you were close. Chad says it's a crossroads or an intersection. And it really is. It's actually a great metaphor, because when you learn the trivium, there's a couple reasons why I think that's a great metaphor, because it is a crossroads between when you learn the trivium, you actually reach a crossroad in your own life. You become much more unfuckable with. You become much more foolproof. Like you can't be, like I said earlier, it's much harder to scam you or deceive you or fool you to get you to buy into things that are false, because you now have an upgraded consciousness. It's not necessarily foolproof. It's not that you could never be deceived or never fall for anything, because nothing is 100%, but it's a significant upgrade versus not having that. So yeah, it really is a crossroads. And when more men and women in the world learn the trivium, it will be a crossroads for humanity. And that's why I'm so passionate as an educator to teach it to you. Because just that one thing, which I've now explained to you, and obviously you're not going to get the whole thing from one explanation. You're going to want to go and continue studying it. But I've opened the door for you to that study. I've opened the door where now you have access to that. And maybe you never even heard of it. So that's already an upgrade. Now you just need to continue that study. And if a band shows up in the search, you're not going to stop and say, "Ooh, it's just a band. There's nothing else. It's just a band." No, you're going to be like, "All right, that's cool. I know they don't want me. This is obviously something they don't want me to know about. So I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper. I might have to do a little more of an extensive search, and I'm going to learn about it." So there was a time when I had never heard of the trivium. So, there's a moment for everyone. A scrub of a watchman. That's not a suspicious name. A scrub of a watchman. Are you a watcher? Are you a monitoring spirit? Clearfield doctrine. Why don't people use that to win more? I don't know. Why don't you ask people, Scrub? Why don't you ask people? And when you say win more what? What would you like to win? What are you in it for? I don't know what your motivations are. I never try to impose my motivations on someone else. So I have no idea what you're in it for. You could be in it for any reason at all. I have no idea. But ask people. If you want to know why people aren't doing that, ask them. Real Estate Ron says, thank you for clarifying. Knowledge, understanding, and then wisdom. Yep. So once again, you take in the information first. That's the knowledge phase. New information. Someone tells you something new, or you read it in a book, or you watch it in a video. Some new knowledge comes your way. Anything at all. Okay? Anything at all. Someone comes along and says, hey, did you know the world is flat? Hey, the world is flat. It's not round. Or it's spherical, or it's inverted, like what's that? Concave. It's concave. The world is shaped like a pear. Someone comes along and tells you the world is different than it is. Okay, so that's knowledge, potential knowledge, but you don't know if it's true or not. You just know someone came along and said, well, this and this proves that this and this. Okay? Now you go to understanding. So now you start to look for logical inconsistencies, logical fallacies. You look for congruency within the information. You look to validate the information. You look at what you already know. You tap into your intuition, but you also use your reason. And you do all this processing because you're going to need to come to some conclusion. You're going to need to come to some conclusion. That's understanding. And then wisdom is wisdom or folly, because if you act foolishly, it's going to be folly, but you're going to act. You're going to take some action based on what you understood about what you learned. And it's either going to work out well or it's not. It's either going to go well for you or it ain't. So assuming you made good choices, that's wisdom. Okay. And then it's iterative. Like you're constantly applying the trivium, and it becomes like a background process that you use mentally all the time, especially when someone comes along and says, you must do this or that, making a claim of some kind or a demand. It's like, hang on, let's evaluate this. Okay. That's the trivium. Ron says, thank you. Yeah. I mean, this small lesson for those who are ready for it is going to be worth its weight in gold. It's going to be a game changer. A scrub of Watchmen says, I'm an auditor of sorts. All right. Well, cool. Cool. To win in court against statutes and codes. Well, you could do that. And sometimes it is, it could be fortuitous to operate in the color of law, the fictitious realm. Or, as we recommend, you could learn how to bring equity, and then you're in a whole different jurisdiction. It's not, the codes don't even really matter. Okay, because equity acts in personam. Equity acts on men and women. It does not act on property or corporations. So watched your video on conditional acceptance, tried it, and never got a response. Okay, when you say you tried it, first of all, there is no try. Either you do something or you don't. So what did you do? Share more details. What type of scenario? What exactly was the matter? Okay. So there is no try. Either you did something or you didn't. D King, thank you, or Die King. Sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Thank you, David, for all the share. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Also appreciate it when you guys ask better questions. It upgrades the entire conversation. So what questions can I answer for you? Any questions at all? Really, there are no taboo topics. Now, I prefer that we focus on topics that we teach as part of our core curriculum, but there are no taboo topics. So can you provide an example of how you go about invoking equity? Well, I can't, there's no way I could teach you how to invoke equity on one hour live video. It's impossible. What I can do is start to expose you to the fact that equity exists and give you pointers on how to learn it. But when I first learned equity, it was a 13-week live course just to learn the basics. Think of it like graduate level study. anything you want to study, even when you start studying private trusts or even natural law. I mean, I've been studying natural law pretty much continuously for about 4 years, and I'm just getting started, in terms of my deeper understanding of natural law. I'm obviously a lot further along than when I started, but you're not going to learn equity on this live. So if you're asking me how to do something, you're asking an inappropriate question for the context. Now, if you like a context of, does equity provide a remedy? Yes. Equity is, let me take a step back. What is equity? Let me ask first for anybody's here. What is equity? Go ahead and comment, because I want to see where people are at before I answer the question. What is equity? So let me write that in the chat so I don't forget to give you guys a prompt. What is equity? What is equity? Can you point me in the direction of equity applied in a court proceeding on a YouTube video? Yes and no. Again, you're not likely to easily find equity demonstrated. They tend to hold this very closely. I haven't seen a video on YouTube where somebody walks you through the equity process. Now, what I can show you is an introductory video that's about 2 hours long that will walk you through, what equity is, how and why it applies to all court presentments, what is actually going on. So I will provide a fair level of detail, but it's not, again, it's just going to be introductory. So let me grab that for you from our website. Okay. So for those who are genuinely interested in learning, this link will be very helpful. Okay, so what is equity? What is equity? A scrub of a watchman, trying to be as much of a smart ass as possible, holding stock in something. Yes, I know that that's one of the definitions of equity, but it's pretty obvious from the context that that's not what we're talking about. So are you going to catch up? Are you going to keep trying to distract us like the dark occultists love to do? I mean, maybe that's your dig. Maybe that's your game. I don't know. Chad Horton says fairness. Yeah, it's all about fairness. Equity is a jurisdiction. The simplest way to explain equity is it's doing the right thing. It's basically a legal jurisdiction that's compelling people to do the right thing. So it's, in that regard, it's very close to natural law, because natural law explains how morality is objective and the difference between right and wrong, which I've talked about on many different videos, and perhaps we will talk about it here. In fact, what is the objective definition of morality? The objective, non-religious, definitive difference between right and wrong. If somebody wants to write that in the chat, see where you guys are at. Ibex Radio, chiming in here from Ibex Radio. Equity in law is where strict application of the law falls short of what's right. Yeah, I mean, I think I interpreted correctly what you're trying to say. Equity comes in to provide a remedy where the strict interpretation of common law, for example, may actually not provide a remedy. For example, in the case of a beneficiary of a trust, where the trust was interpreted in such a way under common law that the beneficiary essentially is losing their beneficial title, and common law doesn't have a solution, but in equity it does. So equity is coming in to upgrade that, to provide a more flexible way to address it. Okay. So for those of you who want to learn more, there is a link here. And on that page of our website, you'll find an almost 2-hour video that just goes into a lot more detail than I would be able to go to right now as an introduction to equity. When I first learned about it, I was very pleasantly surprised. It made a lot of sense that it would exist, because if it was just common law, which is already a big step up above statute, it's still, it's pretty rigid. Ibex Radio, thank you. I'll check it out. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's all you can do, right? G Power, isn't equity fundamentally the protection of value as is held, exchanged, and disputed? Yeah, I think you could look at it that way. I mean, everything in life is an exchange of value. Everything we do is, that's why everything is commercialized, because it's all exchange of value. I'm good at something, or I produce something, and then I want to, if you want to benefit from it, we do some kind of exchange where I give you access to that thing, or I transfer it to your ownership, and you give me something in compensation for that. So yeah, I mean, we can think about it, since essentially, everything we do is like a commercial interaction, or an interaction of some kind, an exchange of some kind of value. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it, is it's looking to make sure that all these exchanges are done fairly. So I think that's a good interpretation. But essentially everything is happening in the legal world is dealing with exchanges, because we're all interacting. So what is objective morality? What is objective morality? What's the objective difference between right and wrong? That's not a religious concept, and essentially can be studied as a science. What is objective morality? Let me write that in the chat. What is objective morality? Real Estate Ron says, I'll watch it after this. Yeah, good on you, bro. I mean, you do you. I would recommend watching it. I think anybody can benefit. Certainly you're going to benefit from knowing what equity is. What you decide to do after that is entirely up to you. I would think for most people, there would be like a calling, like, hey, I should probably study this. This, I could really benefit. So yeah, awesome. Look forward to hearing what your thoughts are about it. G Power says, objective morality is a code of conduct that applies in all situations. Yeah, I would say a better way to explain it, I think you're on the right track, is it's certain spiritual laws that are in effect, essentially inescapable, because law means, you can't get out from under it. That's the definition. Law is binding, that determine what happens as a result of what we do. So when we act a certain way, we get a certain outcome. Okay. So objective morality is just saying, when you act the wrong way, or you do the wrong thing, or you cause harm, hey, you're going to get a certain outcome. And when more people do that, we get an aggregate outcome. Because again, everything that happens, there's a collective and an individual. So there's what goes on in your own life, and then there's what we're all getting together, what we are reaping what we sow collectively, in addition to what goes on in your own private life, right? Because we're all co-creating everything. We're all together in this. Chad says, belief in inherent right or wrong. Actually, it's not a belief at all, because a belief would be essentially a religion. Okay, and the word belief has a little hint in the word. The word lie is right in the middle. So you lie. Okay, so you have to make something, make believe. You have to essentially prop it up. Just kin to magical thinking. So it's not a belief, it's knowledge. Going back to the trivium in context to what we just talked about. It's knowing the difference between right and wrong, not believing it. And actually, Crow 777, who's another great content creator, who's also who's a kind of an independent journalist and educator, and has his own platform, which you guys can check out. He has been quoted as saying, belief is the enemy of knowing. Belief is the enemy of knowing. And that resonates a lot with me. And and I'm not saying there wouldn't be cases where you wouldn't have faith in something that hasn't that you can't validate, you can't verify 100% beforehand, that you can't have faith in things. I'm not saying that, you can never have faith in anything. But that's not how proper knowledge and wisdom is acquired. It's through knowledge, understanding, wisdom, the trivium in context to everything we've been talking about. Okay, so it's not belief, but it is the knowing of the difference between right and wrong. So Ibex Radio asks, is forgiveness as a divine law? Okay, your grammar is a little bit weird there. Are you asking, is forgiveness a divine law without the word as? Because I'm trying to cognize and interpret what you're saying there. It feels like the word as is extra there. Is forgiveness? So if I were to interpret your question as, is forgiveness a divine law? Cleaning it up a little bit. There is this, I'm not sure it's a law in the same way that other laws are, but I think there is a lot of power in forgiveness. Right? There is a lot of power in forgiveness. But this could be misinterpreted. Forgiveness doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. Forgiveness does not mean you allow people to walk all over you. That's not the meaning of forgiveness. But if something has already happened and you can't undo it, forgiveness can be valuable to move beyond that. When you've made a decision that I want to move beyond that and not necessarily create an identity around what has happened. So I think from that point of view, it's a very high-minded state of consciousness, but it does not mean that you allow people to walk all over you. Okay, so I just want to make that really clear. So forgiveness is very powerful. I've forgiven a lot of people. I've forgiven myself because everything starts with the self. I've forgiven myself for some of the bad decisions I've made. Doesn't mean that I didn't change my behavior. Doesn't mean I get a hall pass, a free pass, but I've forgiven myself. I've forgiven my parents, my mom and my dad, for what I perceive to be poor choices they made that affected my life, of which there were many, but I still forgave them because I need to move, because I don't want to hold on to an identity, and that's going to prevent me from moving on. And I've forgiven other people and continue to do that in context when appropriate, but I don't let them walk all over me, or I don't let them gain an advantage unfairly just because they're asking for forgiveness. Belief is formed through hypnosis. Yeah, it's a form of programming, and we as human beings, our natural state is we are very programmable. That's part of human nature, is we're very programmable. We're highly programmable. We program ourselves. That's why a lot of people listen to self-help materials or self-hypnosis as well. But yes, we can and are hypnotized, and repetition is one of the most powerful forms of mind control. Actually, just repeating over and over again something, especially something that's not necessarily true. Etheric Alchemist, jumping right in here to the banking side. What's the path of one's negotiable instrument through the bank, the Federal Reserve, the Social Security Administration? I don't know. And honestly, I don't really care that much about. Let me explain why. What I care about is what is my interface with the public system that allows me to, for example, meet my obligations, to discharge them, so I don't have to pay out of my own pocket. That's really all I care about in context to that. And the reason is because I'm not looking to work within that system at that level of detail. I'm not looking to go into the system and start manipulating at that level. All I'm looking to do, and I think most people are looking to be private, all they're looking to do is just, how do I discharge my public obligations? What's the simplest, most effective way to do that? Now, some people will intellectually want to get more into that, especially if they're going to work within the banking system, and that's great if that's you. So what I would say to you, Etheric Alchemist, is go research that and then come and explain, provide a treatise to explain how that works in terms of the internal mechanics. But if, for someone who's just looking to get out from under the yoke of the public side, following tracing the negotiable instrument through the system is not going to get you there. Knowing how to discharge is going to get you there. Knowing, first of all, what is discharge, why you have a right to do that, how to do it, and what to do. That's all you really need to know. And most people don't even know that. Chad says, great points, David. Well, I'm glad, again, I'm glad you're getting value from that. That means a lot to me. I'm glad you're getting value from that. So what other questions do you guys have in context to what we're talking about? G-Power, forgiveness allows us to live in the present. Yeah, because we need, at some point, if you want to move on from something that has occurred in the past, again, it's important to learn the lessons. It's important to make adjustments in your life based on what you learned from that experience. And then we get to move on because now we're in a different moment. And now there's other things to focus on. And we don't want to make the mistake of playing the victim or making an identity out of something that has happened. So it's not a form of denial. There's no bypassing. There's no bypassing the real work of incorporating it. But at some point, there is a letting go. So what other questions do you guys have? What other questions do you guys have? We got 21 people on the chat here, and I'm not seeing a lot of questions. And I don't know if that's a limitation of this platform. So let me just check in with you guys. Give me a second. By the way, on Instagram, they only allow you to go live for an hour at a time. So that the stream on Instagram has ended. What other questions do you guys have? Asar, who's probably new here, said, what is the topic? Well, what do you think the topic is? What brought you to the Freedom Studio? What made you click on this video? That would be my first question. I'm not sure if people are just randomly finding this live or people who have already been following our channel. So what brought you here? Let's narrow that down. And did you just jump in here, or have you been listening to what we've been talking about? Ibex Radio, does Freedom Studio advocate the use of a private bond for set-off? Well, we don't advocate anything. I'm not sure what you mean by advocate. If you're referring to the secured party / creditor process, which does involve creating a bond and essentially creating a new account at the Treasury that you can use for set-off, I would say, not a lot of people, but people have been using that successfully. And there's a lot of great educators out there who've been perhaps advocating for it or even teaching it. And I think, there's nothing inherently invalid about it. It's a great process. So if you're able to master that, if you can find a receiving party to receive your negotiable instruments, then in some ways, some people look at it as a golden ticket. I guess it just depends on how you look at it. But I wouldn't say we're advocating it. It's more we just bring it to people's attention. If someone feels like they're going to benefit from that, then we say great, just go for it. Asar, again, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. I'm late to live. I follow for a few weeks. Great. Well, welcome. It's good to have you with us. Can you set off through SPC a criminal charge? Probably, but I would say you can also, and I would say you can also discharge a criminal charge through equity, which does not require any particular status. You could use equity without even being having a secured party / creditor standing. So in that regards, it could be considered, superior or more simple. When I say simple, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easier. It's still quite a process to learn to bring equity, but it's simple in the sense that you don't need to have any particular status. You just need to know who you are and know what you're doing and know that you're essentially just doing banking, because it's all the criminal charges it's all commercial crime. It's all happening in the statutory realm, and you're just helping them balance the books, right? No judge will ever admit that, of course. They're sworn to secrecy. But with equity, that's essentially what you're doing. So could you also do that with the SPC? I think you could. From what I've seen, it appears that the equitable process is much simpler. It's simpler in terms of less paperwork, and it's potentially a more streamlined process. But I'm not saying it's easy or that you can grab it, just fetch it in a day. Okay, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Have you been able to successfully discharge all of your personal obligations? No, not all of them. Some of them, yes. Some of them I'm still working on. But I have a very different mindset when I'm going about doing my acceptances or dealing with them. To me, it's now just all business. And also another thing is I've completely separated out my commercial activities from my private person. So I'm really not even doing, I'm doing very little commerce with my Social Security person. I'm not opening any new accounts or anything. So everything I'm doing now is essentially either a business or a trust. But I've been able to discharge a few of them, not all of them. Still working on that process. IBEX radio, I've done my SPC process, but not done administrative process. Not sure how to go about it. You probably, I'm not really an educator who's focused a lot on the SPC. I can give a shout out to Yusuf L, High Frequency Radio, or his website is SPC University. Could be a good resource. He focuses almost exclusively on that process. I wouldn't say exclusively. I mean, he's got other stuff going on, but it's like the bread and butter of what he does. And he's been living and breathing that for quite some time. So I would just go grab some content from Yusuf L, High Frequency Radio on YouTube, or spcuniversity.com, and just check out what he's got going on. Inner Thought, do you have equity course on your website? Yes, we do. It's the same link I posted earlier. Scroll up there. Or, the easiest link to find everything we offer, just go to thefreedom.studio, thefreedom.studio, and you'll find all the links, including our main website. Anything you need is going to be there. And yeah, on our main website, there is a link to the equity course. In your opinion, is mankind being guided to evolve in a higher state of consciousness? Yes, I think so. Yes, in my opinion. I ask because so many I meet or observe acts at the current circumstances that are perfectly normal. Well, those two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, my friend. You can have a lot of people acting as though everything is perfectly normal, and you could have a kind of a hidden hand, as it were, or forces of creation working to help create evolution. I think both of those are true. I think I think we learn through contrast. We learn through apophysis, which is negation or opposition. So without an adversary, there's really nothing to challenge us. So I don't see that as a bad thing. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. I think that it helps promote a rise of consciousness, if you want to put it that way. And I wouldn't say, it is my opinion, but I know that that's what's going on. Like, it's not just an opinion. I know what's going on. So, all right. But the second part of what you said is also true, because we're surrounded by people who just think it's perfectly normal. There's nothing strange going on. So, yes and yes. What other questions you guys have? G Power, you've got some great stuff going on. I appreciate those questions. Those are high value. I just wanted to give you a particular shout out. You're obviously thinking this through. So what questions do you guys have? What questions do you guys have? What questions do you guys have? Give you guys a chance to think about that for a second. What questions do you guys have? Lay them on me. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. What questions do you guys have? Give me your best questions. So we got 28 people watching and we don't have any questions at all. Am I missing something? IBEX Radio, what's an example of equity being applied in court? Well, okay. So most people, when they go into the court, most of the time, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily all the time, but most of the time you're going to the court, you're going in on the public side. And so you're going under what's called a general appearance. You may or may not have heard this term, a general appearance. And that's typically what's happening when you're coming in as either a plaintiff or a defendant. Okay, you're coming in general appearance. Now, technically, it's not you that's the plaintiff or defendant. It's your straw man or your ens legis or your public fiction, the mirror of you and the public side. But you're essentially there acting as the surety because that's what you've agreed to do. Okay, and so everybody in the court is treating you like shit because you're basically there to back up the debts of the debtor or the ens legis, which really has no rights. It's just all privileges. And so when you bring equity is happening on the private side, okay? Because equity is only operating between actual living men and women or moral sentient beings, okay? So in order to invoke equity in the court, you must do what's called, or you must appear in what's called a special appearance, okay? And some folks have probably heard about this, a special appearance. You are not appearing generally. Okay, you're appearing essentially in your private capacity. Okay, now when you appear in your private capacity, you are essentially recognizing what's going on in the court, that it's all banking because it's all commercialized. Okay, it's a bunch of transactions happening on the legal fiction side, and you're just there to help balance the books because that's, when there's a charge, it's all accounting. When there's a charge, the discharge is what balances out the charge and brings the account back to zero. So it's just banking. It's just accounting. So you're coming in there, but you're coming in there recognizing the judge is not going to let you, get away with that so easily. He or she's going to test you that you actually know what you're talking about, know what you're doing. So it takes some practice, but essentially you're basically coming in at the same level as the judge, and you're just saying, hey, the judge is the banker. I'm coming in here. I'm the accounting defendant, if you want to put it that way. And I'm just here to help the judge balance the books. And I've just got to ask the right questions to make that happen. Okay, so that's at a very high level. And obviously, when you start learning equity, you start to embody that mindset. You know what's going on. You know the game that's being played. You know the judge is trying to trip you up, trying to test you. And you just don't fall for it. Okay, but you're not creating controversy. It's like you are just asking really good questions to keep guiding the matter back to a resolution. Okay, rather than arguing or making claims or statements, which is a very low, which is not equity. Which is not equity. Can you comment on revocation of election? Is there more cons than pros for someone who controls or straw man? I see it as completely unnecessary. And the reason is because even if you got a tax obligation in the name of your straw man, you could just discharge it in equity. So let me just adjust the lighting here. Okay. Getting that twinkle in my eyes from this background. It looks like I have yellow fire in my eyes. Not sure if anybody picked up on that. Nobody's commented. It's no big deal. So it's unnecessary because you can learn to discharge. In equitable discharge is one of the simplest processes. So just don't contract with the Treasury. Don't contract with the IRS if you don't want to. But in the event that they do send you an obligation, you can just discharge it. No big deal. So I don't really see necessary to make that kind of statement, because now that's fine. You're asserting a position, but you already have the ability to discharge. So that trumps, in my mind, any need to have a special standing. So that's why I see it as much more powerful. But it's my opinion. What if I came into the court as one of the people? Well, again, every court has a process. So equity is available in the court. You just need to invoke it properly. And that's through a special appearance. So you think there is a certain custom. There's customary ways of acting. Now, local court customs cannot override equity. That's what makes equity so powerful. Custom can actually override the common law. And in that regard, common law is not as powerful as people think it is. So, but just saying, if I come in as one of the people, that's not bringing equity. You need to learn to actually show up in a special appearance. So there's no shortcuts here. If you want to apply this, you've got to learn the proper process. So how would you let the court know? I guess you're missing the word know. How would you let the court know you're a private sovereign? By demonstrating that you know how to bring equity to the court, right? Because it's all a mental game. Remember, the all is mind, the universe is mental. The first principle, it's all about your state of mind. They're going to test you because they think you have no idea what you're doing, and most people don't. So how do you let the court know that you are a true sovereign? By demonstrating that you know you've got your shit together and you know how to invoke equity. Okay, there are no shortcuts here. People keep looking for what's the one thing I can say to invoke my private rights? It doesn't work that way. It's not ever going to be that simple. Let me correct that. It's not ever going to be that easy. It is relatively simple in terms of how it works. It's not overly complex, but it's not necessarily easy, especially if you're not used to it. And the reason is because people have been programmed to think like your own programming will betray you. Your own programming will betray you. So, does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? All right. And I'm going to take a quick break here. So we're going to be right back in about just a couple of minutes. It's only going to be a couple of minutes, folks. I'll be right back. And we're back as soon as I unmute myself. And I think you guys queued up some questions. I love your questions. I live for the questions. So please ask more questions and please ask good questions. That'll keep this conversation going. I have no problem with keep going. We can keep going here if you guys want. It's really up to you. We got 26 people on the live. Let's see what I missed. Wow, you guys wrote a lot while I was away. Ibex Radio says, great explanations. Thank you. Well, you're welcome, and I'm glad you're finding them valuable. This is just introductory. This is just, hey, here's some things that you want to look into. This is not going to give you the whole strategy. You know, I'm at no point am I here claiming to give you like all the answers, but I do have good access to good information and great knowledge that I can share with you. All you have to do is ask the questions. You have free will, so you're free to exercise it. DS11 done RR. I have no idea what you mean by RR, but that's putting them on notice. Them respecting it is a whole other thing. I did mention earlier that I set up a consultation with the Bad Wolf, James C. Lovett, and I'm going to meet with him. I think it's on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, Monday or Tuesday. And because I want to pick his brain about the whole national passport process, which I have not done, but I'm open to doing it based on my conversation with him, with the Bad Wolf, what he says and his ideas. And if he does, I will certainly be interested to, go through that process and see what I can learn about it, or not if I don't deem that it's important enough. WABEN. Incorrect. You do not file the WABEN directly with the IRS. You file it with an employer. Okay. Actually, in the SPC process, let me correct that. For some people, when they do the SPC process, they will file a W8BEN, but for most people, it will be with your employer to basically so they stop withholding taxes from your paycheck. That's really what's going to matter to most people. The Celts are Hebrews. Has anyone put together the name, number, and mark of the beast yet? Is it open to the legal system? I really don't know what you're asking. Not sure what you're referring to. Ibex Radio is in their system, is still going to test you. Yeah, everything is a test. Everything is a test. You're being tested by, here's another way to think about it. Just, make it personal to you. You're being tested by reality to see if you're up to being a sovereign, if you're up to being truly free, if you're up to the challenge to raising your consciousness to a higher level. Are you really in it? Are you really committed to that? Do you have the discipline that it takes to do that, to upgrade your own consciousness? Either, you may not. Not everybody does. There's a lot of people who don't. So yeah, everything is a test. What's your best study guide to overcome such tests? I'm glad you asked me that. We, the Freedom Studio, are first and foremost an educational organization. So we're an educational organization. We're a private community, and we're also a services organization. So we have different services that we offer. On the education side, we do have a curriculum. Okay, we have a curriculum. Most of our courses are, not all of them, but many of them are available through private membership. And we have different membership tiers. And so I will drop that link here for you guys. Give me a second here. So if you're called to join our particular institute or academy as a private member, you can do that. But there's a lot of great educators out there. I've already mentioned a few of them. So we are by no means the only game in town. So it's just, if it resonates, that's great. If not, hey, no sweat, no hard feelings. But we do have a growing curriculum. Everything's organized in courses. And so if you're looking to upgrade, from the baseline where most people are at to a higher level, probably jumping in there and starting to take the courses that we offer is going to be a good point. Or at least someone's of courses. Again, whether it's ours or someone else's, you definitely want to be studying with an academy or a private organization, with some school, private educational institution or association, so you can continually study, because it's going to require continuous study. Ibex Radio, I'm speaking from experience, who is currently dealing with the court system. They should probably knows give zero fucks until you make them recognize. I'm kind of interpreting what you said because you're leaving some words out or something. But yeah, like I said earlier, it's all a test. They're just testing you to see if you're the real deal. That's all that's going on. And they will pay attention. I've talked to a lot of people in network, some of whom just organically figured stuff out on their own without even really following a formal process. And they got the judge to stand up and pay attention, to look, to really pay attention to them from things they said. It's amazing. Some people have really figured stuff out. They put the pieces together and they say certain things and the judge's ears perk up. He's like, what? What'd you just say? Not necessarily in a negative way. You just got his attention or her attention. G-Power, the man of the hour. If I have an associate that seems to be on the fringe of wanting to learn about reestablishing personal sovereignty, what is a great primer? Have them come in, join our membership. Well, actually, before that, just have them come to the free workshop on June 15th. The free workshop is free to enroll. Let me share the link for you guys. This is all on our website. So once you get on our website, it's going to be easy to find everything. But it's free to attend. It only costs the time it takes to attend, the time that you invest. And it's a 4 to 6 hour workshop. It's probably closer to 6 hours, to be honest. And we go through all the foundational material. Now, you're not going to learn everything in one workshop. It's not possible. Most people know that. But you're going to bring your baseline up. The goal is to bring you to a higher level, so now you can make better choices moving forward. So essentially, it's to level the playing field. So there isn't so much of a knowledge gap between the average man or woman and those who are kind of controlling the game. We're kind of leveling the playing field. We're bringing it more to even. So I would say anybody who's at that early stage, just come to the workshop. It's a great starting point. It's a great starting point. S. Foster, I would like to revert my real ID license to a standard. Lipedema is giving pushback. Do you have recommendations? Yeah, learn how to ask equitable questions to compel performance. It's all about compelled performance. If that's your objective. Now, whether or not you'll be successful, I can't tell you that. But anything you want to get another party to do or not do, you're going to have to ask the right questions to get them to make the right decision, right? It's all about free will. G-Power says they're not quite ready to put skin in the game. Hey, it's no sweat off my back. People are either ready or they're not. This is for whom it is, for whom it's for. To put it a different way, this is for someone who's ready for it. So if someone's not ready, hey, maybe they need to listen to more videos, watch more videos, listen to more content, study more. It's all accessible. Everything, there's so much knowledge available online. If they're not ready to join, that's fine. It's up to them. It also has to resonate, and there are other platforms out there. So maybe there's another platform they like better. There's no competition. There's a number of educators out there doing a great job, and I'm not going to disparage them as long as they're not misleading anyone. I'm not going to disparage their work. So This is for whom it's for, bottom line. Garage says, what gives us the right to set off? The right to set off what? Try to ask complete questions. I want to make sure you know what you're talking about. Ask your question more specifically. A U.S. citizen is a business. Yes and no. It's a corporate fiction. It's an entity. It's a state created entity. I guess you could call it a business. It's used to conduct business. But yeah, it is a fictitious corporate entity, a state created entity. That is correct. Ibex Radio says, I've done the passport as a state citizen, not as a national. Yeah, I mean, if you ask the bad wolf, the guy who I'm going to be meeting with next week, he would say it's a state citizen is incorrect. It's a national. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. I probably don't have enough context. I don't want to be splitting hairs on that. You said you went with his advocates. It sounds like an organization. I've been let go, being pulled over many times. Okay. So what happened when you were pulled over? They just immediately let you go, or did you have to compel performance? Because you could do that without changing your documents. With it, you can learn just how to ask the right questions to get them to leave you alone. But provide more details about what happened. Bad wolf is deep, referring to the bad wolf. That's okay. I'll take that as a compliment for him. So, bad wolf, if you're watching this, you're deep, and so you haven't did. Your grammar is just a little bit rough there, my friend. You haven't done, and you is spelled Y-O-U. I'm not sure why people are so lazy with their words. It's just it's a little bit incredible to me. So you haven't done the passport. You have just gone. I'm just reinterpreting your question. You've just gone straight through equity. Well, yes, because equity doesn't require any particular status or any filing of any particular status to invoke it. So it's not necessary to do anything with the passport in order to bring equity. But again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing a passport correction if you feel like you can gain a benefit from doing that. The Celts are Hebrews. It's actually HJR 192. If you're going to quote it, be sure to quote it correctly. HJR 192. That is essentially the House Joint Resolution that enacted the confiscation of the gold, which being the only lawful money at the time, basically changed the entire game. Referring to the workshop, 4 to 6 hours, that's deep. I'll be there. Well, yeah, I think it is. You can ask someone who went into the May workshop. We got some really good feedback. We asked people to rate their experience, and for folks who actually attended, it was like, an average of 8 or 9 out of 10. So people got a really high rating. Okay. Richard Rowland, 15 USC 4724 E1. A United States citizen is considered a United States business. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not you. That's the bottom line. It's what's happening on the corporate fiction side, what's happening in the color of law jurisdiction. IBEX Radio coming back and explaining further what he was talking about earlier. They immediately let me go, and sometimes it took an hour before letting me go. Sometimes they go through a ticket and arrest, but then let me go. Okay, I mean, it doesn't sound any different than what anybody else could experience. I mean, I could be, without correcting my passport, I could have been immediately let go. I could have been held for an hour without changing any of my documents. I could have gotten a ticket. I could have even been arrested, depending on what happens. I'm not really hearing a strict advantage. I think the advantage of learning how to invoke equity in a traffic stop is, at least from the testimonials I've heard, because I'm usually not operating a motor vehicle most of the time. I'm usually, someone else is doing the driving. But from what I've heard in network, you don't need to do any paperwork process. In fact, it's not even necessarily, from what I've heard, going to be an advantage. So you can take that or leave it. Kelly L says, I'm relatively new to what's being discussed on the chat. Well, that's awesome. Do the remedies mentioned also apply in Canada? Yeah, everything we're discussing applies pretty much everywhere in the world, and that's because remedy is private. It's happening in the private, and ultimately, wherever you are in the world, you are a private man or woman when you choose to, stand on that standing. I mean, you are a man or a woman, so you're private. But there's a whole public realm, and in Canada, it just happens to be a little bit different than it is in other places. But it's all pretty much all operating under the same, overarching banking system and financial system worldwide. So it has some local flavors to kind of make you think like you're dealing with a different country and a different matter, but it's really all the same. But the most important thing is to learn how to stand on your private standing. So yes, the short answer is everything that we teach can be applied in Canada and can be applied in Colombia and South America and Mexico, in Norway, in Germany, Poland, Taiwan, really anywhere in the world, Israel, anywhere. Ibex coming back. I've never been let go prior to correcting status. There's definitely merit. Okay. And actually the merit could have been your change in the way you think about everything too. I mean, your mindset could have had an impact on that. And we're talking ultimately about a sample size of n equals 1. In other words, you're sharing your personal testimony. So that may or may not be true, but there are others who have experienced similar outcomes without doing any paperwork corrections. So just bear that in mind. So again, I'm not discounting the fact that those paperwork processes apparently have had a positive benefit, but that does not mean that one needs to do that in order to invoke equity. Okay, just keep that in mind. Just wanted to draw that distinction. Okay. Oops. So what other questions do you guys have? What other questions do you guys have? We still got about 26 people. We've had about an average of 25 or so people the whole time. Would be great to hear some more questions. Richard says a national has rights. So you have rights by virtue of being a living man or a woman. So I have a question for you, Richard, and everyone. Thank you for bringing that up. I apologize for the weirdness in the background. I think the green screen must be dark on one side. So it's probably on this side. See if I can do anything about that. There we go. It's a little better. Now I'm a little darker, but hey, at least you don't get as much fuzz going on. Still learning about that part. Okay. So I still have the magic microphone, but maybe the background isn't wigging out as much. So we'll have to work on that. It's not the best lighting. Let me see if I can do that. It's getting kind of dark outside. So what is a right? What is a right? What is a right? If we're using these words, we should know what they mean specifically in a very precise way. We should have the precise definition. So I would love for you to tell me and share with me, what is a right? Pretend like you're the educator and I'm the student. Educate me. What is a right? What is the objective and precise definition of a right? Go ahead and comment in the chat. What is a right? And hint, there is an objective definition of a right. What is a right? Not sure I like that lighting. Trying to find the compromise there. What is a right? What is a right? It's actually on this side. What is a right? What is a right? Go ahead and comment in the chat. What is a right? Give me your best definition. See, this is why we cover natural law first in the workshops that we do, because until you can get that foundational knowledge, you're going to be all over the map when it comes to the details. And you're going to still be thinking that you need the public side, to somehow assert, to assert your rights when you don't. So what is a right? Go ahead and comment in the chat. What is a right? I'm probably not going to move forward until at least I get at least one answer. What is a right? Please give me the objective, clear, and precise definition. What is a right? What is a right? I'm not looking for examples of rights. I'm looking for the definition that includes all rights. So just give me the one definition that encompasses all rights. What is a right? What is a right? Some of you guys are giving examples of rights, but you're not giving me the definition. So Richard is correct. You do have a right to free speech, but that's not what a right is. Richard is also correct that you have a right to bear arms and essentially to defend yourself, but that's also not what a right is. A right, that's just an example of a right. The Seltzer Hebrew says, thank you for a great show. You're welcome. Glad you're getting value. Richard, again, Richard keeps coming up with examples, but Richard's going to be here until the end of time if he tries to give an example of all rights, because hint, hint, you have infinite rights. You have infinite rights. I can tell you with 100% certainty that you have infinite rights. So you're never going to be able to list all of them. Okay. Kelly L is getting closer to the truth, a lot closer than anyone else so far. To live in honor and to not be trespassed upon. That's pretty close to the objective definition. So good job there. But what is a right? G-Power also coming pretty close, or just explaining it in a way that is pretty congruent. A right is an action that cannot be lawfully averted. There is a much simpler way to explain it, in my opinion, but I'll take that as a good input. So what is a right? What is a right? That's the question. I'm asking you to answer it as though you're the educator. And my biggest hint, because I think some people are still struggling with this, I'm not asking you to give me examples of rights. And the reason I'm not asking for examples is we have infinite rights. So if you keep giving me examples, you'd have to be here till the end of time, and you would still not give me all your rights because you have infinite rights. So that's a little bit of a hint there. So I'm just looking for the one concise definition of what a right is. And I'm not going to let this go because this is so important. We're not moving past this because there's no bypassing this. Okay, there's no bypassing this definition if you want to truly be free. IBEX radio is getting closer to the truth as well. What's morally, ethnically correct? I would actually remove the word ethnically. I think you meant ethically. So if you did, that's fine. What's morally correct and allowable? Yes, but we still need to define what, vis-a-vis what I talked about earlier, what objective morality is, so that we can tie it together and explain what a right is. Okay. Right is the understanding of righteousness in your heart. No, it's not. That's not what a right is, but that's still something that could be valid. But that's not the definition of a right. Just need to be clear about that. I'm looking for the objective definition of what a right is in context to everything we talk about. What is a right? Richard now probably quoting from somewhere online, which is fine. Rights in a broad sense are fundamental entitlements or freedoms that individuals are believed to have. So that's incorrect. They're not it's not based on any kind of belief. So we can throw out that definition right there. It's not based on any kind of belief. It's objective. So what is the objective definition of a right? Some of you guys are getting pretty close. Really want you to put your thinking caps on. Created in God's image, we are the apex of authority. That's not the definition of a right, but we do have free will, which is an amazing gift, and free will is what allows us to either do the right thing or not. All right, now we're finally getting somewhere. So decentralizing mind control. Decentralizing mind control. I like that. So a right is a potential action one could take that is not wrong because it causes no harm. So closest answer yet. Okay. So there's a couple ways to explain it. I'll give you the definition that I like to use. Again, as we explain these things, there's always going to be certain limits to language and how we explain it. But a right is any action that you can take, that does not cause harm. Okay, that doesn't steal, doesn't cause harm through the theft of life, rights, or property. Okay, of another. And that include things like trespassing, coercion, deception, stealing property, assault, rape, and murder. So it's basically anything you do that's not causing harm. It's not wrongfully harming another. Okay. And there is a little bit of nuance, because if someone comes and attacks you and you have to defend yourself, and you even harm or kill that other party in the process of defending yourself, you had a right to do that. You had a right to do that because you were defending yourself. Okay. So that is the definition of a right. It's any action or behavior that you can take that doesn't cause harm, doesn't steal another's life, rights, or property. Okay. And as you can tell from that definition, you have infinite rights, and everybody has the same rights because everybody can do the same infinite actions that don't cause harm. Now, that doesn't mean everybody will do the same thing, and I'm not expecting people to act the same way. I'm not a collectivist or a hive-mindist or whatever you want to call it. I don't believe in that kind of nonsense. I don't subscribe to those ideologies. But technically, everybody has the same infinite rights. Okay? Government would beg to differ. Well, the government is a dead, fictitious entity, so the government probably doesn't really have an opinion. But if you're talking about the men and women who work in government, if a particular man or woman's working in the government and they're of a different opinion, well, then they have the mindset of a slave, because if that's not true, that means that some people are masters and get to tell other people what to do and can control their behaviors. So that's the mindset of a slave. In other words, to be a master, you have to also have the mindset of a slave. It's, there's no taking those apart. The Celts are Hebrews. To know something is not to belief, it is so, but to know it so as a fact. That's correct. As I said way earlier in the live, belief is the enemy of knowing. Thank you, Crow 777, for that great quotation. I agree with you. Belief is the enemy of knowing. Belief has the word lie in it. It's knowledge that matters, what you know to be true. So traveling is not a right because the portal ants get trampled on. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people use that argument before, and I think people who eat a vegan diet also use a similar argumentation. You're not. It's infeasible to live in a way that you're not going to harm some creatures. Even people who eat plant-based are harming the plants. So it's impossible to not harm any form of life. But we're talking about between moral sentient beings, right? Who have conscience, who have the capacity to even grasp these concepts. So between men and women, we can't even master that. And we're worried about what's happening with the ants. We can't even respect each other's rights. Do you see where the problem is in that thinking? We can't even wrap our heads around the proper way to relate to rights among men and women. And we're going and looking at, I can't objectively not harm anything in reality. So it's just a diversion of thinking. It's just getting away from the main point. Just trying to fix that lighting. It's a little better. Okay. Not even sure how we got on this whole topic of rights, but in order to activate your sovereignty, you've got to know these basics of what a right is. And then nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to get it right 100% of the time. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to commit errors. We're all going to do something wrong. The point is to, master this to the level where you do less harm, you cause less harm, and you start to step into a higher level, okay, where you start to respect, first of all, your own rights, respect other people's rights, and then you start to act accordingly. And when more people do that, that's when things get better. Okay, so it's an aggregate function. It's not collectivism, because the shift always happens privately in you. So you're the one that has to do the work privately. There's no bypassing it. So it's not a collectivist thing. However, there is an aggregate result. When more of us embody that, things get better for everyone. And that's essentially why we created the Freedom Studio. That's why we do what we do, because we want to share this knowledge more broadly, get the word out to more people, and help more individuals like you to raise your consciousness, to step into your sovereignty, and we're all gonna benefit together from that effort. So that's what it is. But it's definitely not a collectivist thing. Belief by definition is to accept as true, especially without verifying. Well, yep, that is correct. Now, again, I said this way earlier. I'm not saying you should never have faith in anything that you haven't been able to verify ahead of time. I mean, at some point you have to have faith in yourself that you're going to be able to do what you need to do, even before you do it. So you can have faith, but really what matters in this reality is gaining knowledge of yourself and knowledge of the nature of reality. And that is the study of natural law. So come to the workshop on the 15th of this month. It's free to attend. I already shared the link. Let me see if I can find it here to pin it again. I posted it a little while back. Absolutely free to attend. You will pay with your time. You will not pay a financial price. And you actually probably gain in many ways you can't even imagine. So jump in and join us on the 15th. All the details on the website. I have a little video where I walk you through and explain what we're going to be doing. If you want to get more of an intro. So go ahead and join us. It'd be great to have you there. In the May workshop, we had a maximum of 180 people at one time participating, which was awesome. Richard keeps you keep quoting a lot of these statutes, and that's fine. I mean, if you want to study those, you can certainly do that. What I can tell you and others is the freedom that you seek does not exist in the statutes. That's not where the remedy lies. So if you want to use that as an intellectual exercise, if you enjoy that process, that's fine. That's not where the remedy lies. All remedy is private. All remedy is private. There's no bypassing the real work. There's no bypassing the work, the real work. And if anybody tries to tell you otherwise, they are misleading you. They are misleading you. And I recommend that you apply the trivium and see what you can determine, right? Don't take my word for it. I'm just telling you because I've been at this for a while and I've kind of watched the iterations. All remedy is private. Doesn't mean we can't speak publicly and share knowledge publicly and share, get the word out there, which I am obviously. But ultimately, the real work is always private because the real work cannot be bypassed. And I don't care what people tell you. If you keep trying to externalize your power, then good luck. All I can say is good luck. Let me know how that works out for you. Let me know how that works out for you. IBEX Radio, did you ever notice Jesus answers a lot with questions? No, I didn't specifically notice that, but it's not too surprising because, that is, in the spirit of equity in particularly, it's, again, recognizing that people have free will, what you're doing is you're asking questions to really provoke the other party with whom you are in conversation to think about what they're doing or not doing, to put the ball back in their court. Because ultimately, you cannot usurp free will. You cannot use, nor would we want to, because if you try to usurp someone else's free will, that means someone else can come along and usurp your free will. You can't be a master without being a slave. You cannot be a master without being a slave. Okay. So asking questions is a great way to provoke the conscience, tap into the conscience or help the other party tap into their own conscience, assuming they have one. Now, if you're dealing with a psychopath, special case, if you're dealing with someone who's born a psychopath, so essentially there's a part of their mind, their brain that's not working properly, and they cannot experience emotions like fear or love. They have a very limited emotions, and they can't objectively feel the difference between right and wrong. That could be a different conversation. You're probably just going to get responses from them. They're probably just going to tell you what they want you to hear rather than responding from conscience. But if you're talking about the 99% of people that do have the ability for conscience, then this can be very powerful. Very powerful. So what questions do you guys have? We've been going for about 2 hours. We still have about 28 people. What questions do you guys have? I love answering your questions. So just to make that clear, I have no, I came here to answer your questions. Okay, that's why I'm here. So bring them on. No one put me up to this. No one's put me up to this. What questions do you guys have? If not, we will wrap up. We've been going for a little over 2 hours. But what questions do you guys have? Is creating a trust the best place to start? No, it isn't, but it is a good thing to do. It's good to learn how to create a trust, but I wouldn't put that as step number one. Step number one is to study and learn natural law. And we do have curriculum for that in context to what we teach at the Freedom Studio. And the reason is you need to have that foundational knowledge, and you need to start unlocking your own higher level of consciousness before you start implementing these different strategies. If you start doing things you start moving pieces around the board, but you haven't really learned the rules of the game, you're still going to be trampled all over. Or you're going to make mistakes, you're going to end up wasting time, and you may actually put your assets at risk. Now, having said that, it is a great idea to learn how to create a trust and use a trust. So I definitely recommend that, and that is part of our curriculum. Equity is private. Equity is fair and impartial. If you're sitting across a fair man. Yeah, I mean, equity acts in personam. It acts specifically on men and women, not on property. That's a big distinction from the common law, which typically acts in rem or on property. All right, Ibex Radio is heading out. Thank you. It's been real. Peace and blessings. I'm out. Good to have had you with us. So thank you for joining us. So just checking in, see if there's any last questions before we wrap up. I mean, I have no problem keep going, but you guys have to give me something. I mean, this has to be a fair exchange, right? I'm not here just to give and not receive anything. The receiving part is you guys asking good questions so that I have something to answer. So that's the reciprocity. So I'm not expecting you to pay for this interaction monetarily, but everything, nothing, there is no such thing as something for nothing. So if you guys want me to keep going, you gotta provide me with some good questions to answer. Seltzer Hebrews, truly enjoyed this. Awesome. OG Cabbage, I'm in late. Sorry. Hey, I mean, nothing to be sorry about. But if you got questions, go ahead. You got questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. That's what I can promise you. I will answer them to the best of my ability. I almost said try, but there is no try. There's either do or not do. So if you ask a question, I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. And there are no taboo topics. However, having said that, I do encourage people to ask better questions and relevant questions. So here's an example of not a great question. How does the real idea affect the process? So what process? What process? Okay. So try to ask questions that are more specific and more detailed, that are going to get us to the deeper level of truth. Okay. It's just that's a very vague question. Okay. I'm not hating on anyone. I'm encouraging you guys to ask better questions. Okay. So what questions do you have? What's your objective? I would ask you a question, which I'd love for you to answer. Why are you here? Why are you engaging with the Freedom Studio and with me? Why are you here? Why are we having this conversation or this interaction? It's not really a conversation in the traditional sense, but why are we having this interaction? Why are you here? And what are you hoping to get out of this? So I'd love to hear that. Some of you, it looks like some of you guys have been with us on the whole live for more than 2 hours. So out of 26 people on the live, we've probably had like less than 10 have actually engaged with us. So what brought you here? Why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of it? Also, Asar says, salute, I shall begin with natural law. Yeah, that's your starting point. Your future self will thank you for doing that. I can tell you, for me, it's only been an upgrade. This is just a personal testimony. It's just me sharing my story, which I also do in context to the workshops that we do. I share a little more about that. But for me, it's been a huge upgrade, and I would never go back. I would never want to go back to before knowing natural law, because everything just got so much better as a result. Everything gets better. And not only does everything get better, you start making much better decisions, and your whole life just gets a lot better. Sertone 777, is UCC filing important? Well, it depends on what the context is. What are you filing for? Why do you want to file a UCC? Okay, what's the purpose? It can be valuable. So for trust operations, you can protect a trust by having a lien against the trust from another entity. So in that context, it could be valuable. For conditional acceptance, it could be helpful if there's a security interest. See, to file a UCC, there has to be a valid security interest somewhere. So some people are kind of putting the cart before the horse. So a better question would be asked is having a security interest valuable? And it can be. It depends on the context. So that question could have been formulated a little better. What do you think about geoengineering? I have a lot of thoughts about geoengineering. Do you have a more specific question? Sean Caesar. I'm here to learn how to actually set myself free from the debt matrix. Inner power. Well, great. In that case, jump over to the free workshop on the 15th of this month, on June 15th. If you can make it, it's on a Sunday. It's free to attend, and we're going to give you the foundational principles. You're going to learn, wherever you are, you're going to get value from it. And we're going to get you the foundation principles. Let me find that link so I can just share it one more time. Here we go. So jump over and join the workshop. You can join right from our website. It's absolutely free to attend. You only pay with your time and attention. Okay? So go ahead and jump in and join. And we hope to see you there. For those of you who've already enrolled, we look forward to seeing you there. It was a total accident, me being here. However, it's been an enjoyable morning listen. I'm glad you got value from it. So if it's a morning listen, I'm wondering what part of the world you're in. You're definitely not here in the States. Sertone, have you had personal success with conditional acceptance? Yes. Yes, I have. What's the nature of your biggest victory? The upgrade in my consciousness and knowing, having a higher level understanding of the game. And beyond that, opening the door to even higher levels of playing the game, such as equity. So realizing that conditional acceptance isn't even the best strategy for dealing with the public, but it was certainly a lot better than what I was doing before. So it was really, really, for me personally, it was really the upgrade in my consciousness. And then also, some external benefits, like having certain things completely drop off of my personal credit report. But, in retrospect, that's not that critical to me because I'm not even operating with personal credit. I'm using business credit now. So it's not even a primary benefit. The CELTS, what about notifying the registrar by hand? Which registrar? I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm not trying to be hard on you, but I'm not sure, what you're trying to ask. Diana, hi Diana, what's going on? What you got going on? You got some questions for us? Lay them on me. What you got? Hit me up with those questions. Love those questions. The Celts are Hebrews, the state registrar, probate, they issue the birth certificate. Again, what exactly are you trying to do? You don't need to notify. You don't need to file anything to exercise your equity. To bring equity. So, are you talking about the secured party creditor process? What exactly are you trying to do? What is today's topic, Diana? The topic is the same as it always is, Diana. It's freedom. It's natural law. How to cognize and recognize natural law. How to incorporate it in your life. How to build foundations for sovereignty. How to do the real work so that you can actually be free if that's something you choose to do, because it's always a choice. And how to implement that practically in your life, how to protect your assets, how to operate privately, how to operate at what's called an arm's length from the public. So we're not destroying the public. We're just basically operating at arm's length from the public. So really any of the things that we normally discuss, but basically ultimately it boils down to how to be free and how to help create more freedom in the world. That's what we're all about. That's why it's the Freedom Studio. That's why it is the Freedom Studio. Okay, because we're all about freedom. So we'll probably wrap up soon because I'm not getting, you guys aren't giving me enough to chew on here. It's got to be reciprocal. I'm looking for high value, good questions that are just on point. Ian says, why does it seem like most of the teachers mentors area seem ghetto or living on the fringes? Not trying to be mean. I don't know why. Like which teachers or mentors are you talking about? And what do you mean exactly by ghetto? So I'm not sure. And yeah, I mean, who are you talking about? Everybody has a different lifestyle. The teachers that I've been following, they're as different from each other as night and day. And I don't typically use ghetto as an adjective, but I guess interpreting what you mean by that, I haven't really seen very many at all that I would call ghetto, assuming that I know what you mean by that. So not sure what you mean by that, bro or sis. Okay. Certone, did you know the legal name is actually a commercial entity, protected like another asset? Yeah, it's a state-created entity. That is correct. But what does that have to do with you activating your personal sovereignty? What does that have to do with you being, embodying objective morality and becoming the cause point of not only your own life, but generating more freedom? Like, how does that correlate in your case? Ian, coming back to clarify, in the freedom movement, many teachers have a lifestyle that has run-ins with the law. Okay, I can't, I don't have any basis to either confirm or refute that because I'm not sure who you're talking about. I think some people have. for sure. Some have definitely had, but many have not. And also when you say run-ins, I mean, anybody could be pulled over when they're on by a policy officer, and it doesn't mean that they're, trying to create controversy. It's just the nature of the system is going to pull them over because that's what the system does. It likes to pull people over. It's just how we deal with it. So again, I'm not sure where you're coming from, Ian. I mean, what is the underlying purpose of your question? What are you trying to get at? If you could just clarify. I mean, what are you trying to do in your own life? Instead of looking out there and saying, well, these teachers are doing this or that, like, what are you trying to accomplish? It's easy to come in and say, well, these people are doing that. And yes, there are some pretty well-known people that have had run-ins with the law. I mean, I think I know who, some of people that you may be referring to for sure. And, what's that famous expression? I'm trying to remember. I think it's from the movie Across the Universe, never knock the way another cat swings or something like that. That's how I look at things. Unless somebody's coming and doing something objectively immoral and objectively deceitful, I'm probably not going to even mention them. Do people serving time an advantage in learning? Maybe in some ways. I wouldn't say categorically. But if you've been on the inside, you're certainly going to gain some life experience that, and a perspective that other people don't. So it could have an advantage in certain ways. It could be a disadvantage. So, yeah. Postliminium. Yeah, you're throwing all this fancy terminology. It doesn't have to be a word salad. Just describe it in street lingo. Describe it in street lingo. A lot of gurus emerge from prison having learned this movement. I have no idea what you're saying. First of all, what makes them a guru? And secondly, what does that mean, learning a movement? How do you learn a movement? Serotonin, if you don't own the legal name, what are you conditionally accepting? Anything as a debtor or trustee? You don't need to own the legal name to discharge if that's what you're trying to do. And most people are just looking to discharge their public obligations. So you don't need to own the legal name to do that. It's completely unnecessary. You will need to know, that you have the ability to discharge and how that works mechanically, of course, but you don't need to own the name in order to do that. That's not necessary. If you have lawfully claimed the name as an unclaimed ward. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, bro, or sis. With equity recognizes that there is no money. It was all taken away. We're just dealing with debt instruments now. And in order for the system to not violate natural law, there had to be a remedy. And the remedy is very simple. You can pay for your public obligations with performance, which is acceptance. It's really that simple. So all this, unclaimed word, I'm not sure where you're going with this. So not just discharge for status. I mean, if you need the public side to validate your status, go for it. I don't need anything from the public to know that I'm a sovereign being and that I am in my rights. I don't need the public side to validate that for me. It's not required. So some people will do it on principle, and there can be advantages to doing certain processes can confer certain advantages when you know how to wield them. But you're not doing them in order to be free. And if someone thinks that that's going to make them free or activate their rights, then they're deluding themselves. How do you pay for property tax? With performance, which is acceptance. Learn how to do that either in equity, or some people will do it using an administrative process in common law. But whichever process you use, just pay for it with performance. That's the only way you can pay a public obligation. Seltzer Hebrews, can you give the time for the class? Yes, it's Sunday, June 15th, so a week from tomorrow, at 11:11 Eastern, which is 8:11 in the morning Pacific, and probably about 3:11 in the afternoon in the UK. So it's a pretty reasonable time. It's a little early on the West Coast. Whoops, can you do a video on that? Do a video on what? We do a lot of videos. If you're asking me if I can teach you how to accept your presentments in equity in one video, no. You would want to learn the entire equity process so that you could stand on equity no matter what happens. So it's not just a one and done. Now, if you're dealing with a particular issue, you could always meet with me privately in consultation, and we could look at your scenario and figure out the best approach. But generally, you're not going to learn everything you need from one video. Performance, you mean the signature. I mean acceptance, which is, some people call it an autograph, some people call it a signature. But yes, on the public side, it's a signature. It's acceptance. By the way, Celts is pronounced with a K. Celts. Okay, well, I appreciate that. My bad. Very good. The Celts are Hebrews. EN performance. Yeah, performance basically just means that you are performing on whatever you've agreed. You're performing on an agreement. You're doing or not doing what you've agreed to do. And in the case of public obligations, performance is acceptance. So you are signing the documents a certain way, signing, stamping, creating, adding certain notations to these documents, and then returning them. And that is your performance under the agreement. That's all you need to do. You don't need to get into all the, reclaiming the birth certificate, this, that, and the other. It's not necessary. Okay. Some people will still do that on principle, but it's not required. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There's a simpler way. People are making this all complicated. Could you use an OID for property? Hey, let me, if that doesn't work, could this work? Hey, let me just try shooting 100 different things at the wall and see what will stick. David, could you just throw 100 things at the wall and just see if one of them sticks? Yeah, sure, I could do that. But again, why would you do that if there's a way to discharge an equity? And equity does not require a filing of anything. You do not file anything. No, not an OID or any other document. Okay, you're just accepting and returning, and you're including a notice, because we always give a notice of what we're doing. Okay, to stay in honor. I'm noticing the other party. This is what I'm doing, letting them know that I'm accepting and returning their presentment. You're not filing anything. There's nothing to file. Kelly says, I understand that using postal service essential for registered delivery of documents. What to do if there's a postal strike? You'll have to look for an alternate way. I mean, in equity, we don't send anything registered or certified mail, so that's already simpler. You just need to have what's called a firm book entry, which is called a certificate of mailing. So it's a much more simple, streamlined process. Sertone77, how do you feel about credit on the public side and how it creates a debt from your performance? How it creates a debt from your performance. There's something not quite correct about your sentence there. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm not saying that you're trying to be difficult, but I have no idea what you're getting at there. If your bill goes into collection, you use a conditional acceptance. I wouldn't. I would just do an acceptance unconditionally, because again, with inequity, you can just accept and return all your public obligations, no matter where they're coming from, even up to and including criminal charges, arrest warrants, eviction notices, everything. Everything can be accepted in equity. So it's a much simpler process because it's all public obligations. There's no need to add any conditions because you already have the ability to discharge all of them. You just need to learn how to do that and how to stand on that in case you get pushback. But there's nothing there. You don't need to add any new conditions because you already have that ability. Does that make sense? EN says, I'm confused by the term equity. Does that mean acceptance? No, they're not equivalent. Equity is a jurisdiction. It's a legal jurisdiction that was created as an enhancement or a level up from common law. It was specifically to address the rigidity and inflexibility of common law and dealing with many different situations. So it provided a whole new legal jurisdiction that acts in personam. It acts on people. And it's all about getting people to do the right thing. And acceptance is one part of equity. The reason, because again, they took away all the gold and silver in the 1930s. There is no money. It's all negotiable instruments. It's all debt instruments. And in order to not be essentially treasonous against the Constitution and, essentially not to violate natural law, as I like to explain it, there had to be a way out. There has to be a remedy. And the remedy is very simple. You can pay for all your public obligations with your signature, with a signature. I should say a signature because signature is on the public side, but you can pay for all of your public obligations with a signature. Okay. So equity, fairness, fair dealings, doing the right thing. You're welcome, Diana. I'm glad that was helpful. Questions? Let me know what you guys have in your mind. I'll let you guys think about that. Questions? I mean, I'll answer anything. You guys got to ask the question, though. I can't make you ask the question. You have the free will. Ian says, do you recommend a book for novice learners? Yes, I could recommend several books. Again, I'm all about learning natural law first. I think that's one of the differentiators between the Freedom Studio and I wouldn't say all other sovereignty-based education platforms, but a lot of them, from what I've been able to see, is we always prioritize learning natural law, the study of natural law first. So I would say before anything else, start your study of natural law. Now, there's a lot of ancient texts involved. One good resource is to start with a book called the Kybalion. And if you can get a hard copy, I recommend it. There's nothing like, even in this modern digital age, there's nothing like having a hard copy book. It's not going to set you back very much. It's going to be a great investment. In fact, let me see if I can find that for y'all. I may actually order it myself. It's probably available on Amazon and probably some other bookstores online if you don't want to buy from Amazon. Let me see where it might be available. Let's see. But yeah, I would get a hard copy, but you could always read it digitally. No big deal. If that's going to be more advantageous for you, then you should do that. There's a page called kybalion.org. I'll share it right here. And there's actually a PDF that you can download, and you can also order the book. So it looks like from that one website you can get it. So let me just share that. I don't have any affiliation with this website. Let me just say that. I don't have any affiliation with this website, but it looks like it's a reasonable resource. So check it out. That's a great starting point. It'll probably demystify a lot of things for you about what's going on. And then you just want to study your natural law because everything's being done. Anything is being done against you, you're consenting to because you don't know how the game is being played. It's really that simple. You don't know how they're playing the game and you don't know how they're using your consent. They're getting you to consent to your own slavery, which is what we talk about in context. And I don't know about you, but me, I didn't come here to be a slave. No, sir. No, ma'am. I did not come here to be a slave. Okay. So I am prioritizing what I need to learn in order to do that, in order to master sovereignty. Serotonin asking about endorsements. The only endorsement I use nowadays is the one I learned from Equity. It's very simple. It's the same every time. It's very uniform. Everybody's doing the same kind of endorsement, and there's nothing fancy about it. So we're not trying to do any restrictive endorsements or qualified endorsements or this or that or quantum syntax or 10,000 other things. Not that you would never use any of those things, but we're not doing it in Equity. We're not doing any of that. It's super, super simple. It's just too elegant. It's so simple. There's no complexity to it. Okay. It takes all the complexity out of it, which is perfect because we don't need that complexity. Okay. We don't need any complexity. Unnecessary. Not productive. I don't know about you, but I don't have time to waste on, 10,000 different rabbit holes. Do you share receipts from your students? Only with their permission. If somebody is, everybody has the free will to either choose, share or not share. If they decide that they're willing to share something, then yes, they usually share it directly without my prompting, but only if they want to. It's all based on free will. But keep in mind that just because somebody else got a result doesn't mean you will, right? Because all remedy is private. And your ability to stand on your remedy is going to be a function of your mindset. And I know some people don't like to hear that, but I'm telling you, that's the absolute truth. 10,000 other people could get remedy and you won't get it if you're not in the proper mindset. So that's why I emphasize so much the natural law, because it's going to be an upgrade in your consciousness. And some people are just never going to get it. I think, in my opinion, there's probably going to be a lot of people that they're not ready for it. They're not ready for it. And that's okay. Everybody's where they need to be. I'm not here to judge people. I do think it would be better if more people got this, because then it's going to get better for all of us. But, that's out of my control. I can only educate. But yeah, I don't recommend going down 10,000 rabbit holes. I don't see that as being productive. Can't see how that would be helpful. I'm all about efficiency, and I just don't see how that would be beneficial. Give examples of get remedy. Well, what are you trying to accomplish? Let's make it personal to you. What exactly does remedy mean to you? What are you trying to accomplish? And let's first figure out if that's even something we can help you with. And the Celts are Hebrews is absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. The remedy is within you. I talked about this in one of my videos. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but it was how to get a remedy. I think it was. See, people keep looking for, like, validate this for me, prove this to me, prove this works, prove you're able to do it. How do you do it? I don't know, bro. What are you trying to do in your life? What is it that you want to accomplish in your life? And what's stopping you from getting there? What did you come here to do? Because it could be different from me. What are you trying to get? We all have some common goals. Of course, we want to get out from under the yoke of the public. That's great. There are some very specific processes that we can learn. But it's mostly about knowing what's going on and knowing yourself and basically being unfuckable with. Unfuckable with. I guess that's not necessarily a word. Unfuckwithable. You can't be fucked with. Because you know it's not a belief. You don't believe anything. You know what your rights are. So stop looking for validation in other people. You're not going to be able to bypass the inner work. And you can go listen to some of these podcasts. I'm not going to name any names, where they go on and on for hours and hours talking about US codes and the UCC and, taking these deep dives into rabbit holes and just endless rabbit holes. And, it all sounds fascinating and it tickles your brain because it's a great intellectual exercise. At the end of the day, you've accomplished nothing. A big fat zero. You've made it no further along in your journey because you're not doing the real work. You're not doing the real work. You're not looking inside. You're not cleaning up your inner house. You're not taking back your own mind. And I'm like, good, just keep up. Report back to me. Let me know how that works out for you. Give me an update on that. You're not going to be able to bypass the real work in context to everything we're doing. If that's truly what if being free is truly what you desire, because again, it may not be. It's not for, not everybody has really cultivated that inner fire of desire to do it, to accomplish that. You got free will. Let me just share a little bit about how you can get more involved if you want to. Our organization is called the Freedom Studio. And we're actually a growing organization. We have about 9-10 people on our staff now, which is great. Some really high quality people. Got some great folks working behind the scenes to make sure everything that we're performing at a very high level, that we continue to roll out better materials, better educational materials, better videos, more videos, higher quality workshops, higher quality curriculum. So everything you could ever want, you can find at the following link. I've made it so easy for everyone. So all you need to do is go to thefreedom.studio and you will find everything you need to get involved. We've got a free community on Telegram. It'd be great to have you there. Please join us if you want. And you're welcome to join us. If you are called to, you can join the free live workshop. The next one will be on the 15th of June. So coming up in just over a week. We also have memberships or private member associations. That's where you come into the private and you get access to a growing library of courses that are all organized in curriculum to answer that question. What should I study on first? What should I study on next? And you move forward. So jump in if you want to. And the freedom.studio is the link. The freedom.studio. So let's see what questions you guys are asking. Would it be a bad idea to share how inequity? On this video, yes, because remember, all remedy is private. If I start putting these things out in the public, it's just going to make it harder for all of us. It would be irresponsible because I'd be giving you a little snippet of something that's not really going to provide you with a complete solution. Because just because you sign things in a particular way, if you don't know what you're doing and why, and you get pushback from the other side, well, what are you going to do? Right? Plus, it's going to make it harder for those of us who are trying to do proper acceptance and treating it as it is, which is basically a banking process. You're doing banking. So just like an employee wouldn't be hired by a bank and like the first day would say, well, here's how you process these payments from day one. It's like, no, you're going to learn how the process works and you're going to learn what to do if there's an issue. So same thing with equity, right? You're going to learn not just how to accept, but what to do if the other party dishonors your acceptance. So we do that because we also want to invite people to study it who are actually going to take it seriously, who are going to respect the fact that we're all trying to do a process that's going to work for more people and treat it the way it is supposed to be, which is private, right? This is not public for a reason. It's not happening in the public. We can certainly talk about it and let people know in the public that it exists and invite them to come into the private to learn it. So yes, it would be a bad idea to just, throw something out there out of context. Can you be free and work in a company? Well, it depends. What kind of company is it? Are you working in a trust? Is it a corporation? What are you doing? I mean, I don't see why not. Are you a contractor? Are you an employee? I mean, whatever's going on in that company, that's not you. You're just interfacing with that company. It depends on what you're doing. I mean, what is your definition of freedom, Diana? Let me ask you this. What does it mean to be free? If you can answer that question, I could probably answer your question. Don't mix jurisdictions. Look forward to joining. Yeah, I mean, look, there's obviously a part of me that would love to shout it all from the from the hilltops, like, hey, you wouldn't believe how simple it is to do this. There's a part of me would love to do that, but I can't for several reasons. First of all, I know the difference between public and private. I have to respect the agreements that I've already made to not just carelessly toss that information out and, just to respect the process to make sure that it's not harming, because it could actually make things harder. I could technically be harming people by just carelessly tossing it out there, by making it harder for others to get out from under the public. And so, you could say that I'm objectively causing harm that way. I mean, that would be one way to look at it. Corporation as an employee. Again, Diana, my question to you is what is freedom? What does it mean to be free? You haven't answered that question. So what does it mean to be free? And then we can answer the question that you asked. What is freedom? How do you explain that concept? So we've been going for almost 3 hours. I'm happy to keep going, but I'm going to need to take a quick break here. But let me do a quick poll. If I get at least 5 thumbs up or yes or something like that in the chat, at least 5, I'm happy to keep going after a short break. If I don't get at least 5 people telling me, and that's actually pretty generous because we got like 28 people here. If I don't get at least 5 yeses or thumbs up to keep going, then we're going to just wrap it up. So I need at least 5 thumbs up or yeses if you guys want me to keep going. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. I think the use of the word process is misleading. None of this is a neat commercialized step-by-step. Well, yes and no. There are processes that are, can be organized, but it's rarely a one and done, if that's what you mean. It's rarely just like, hey, I did it, and there's no, you have to deal with contingencies. You have to deal with responses. Everybody has free will. So something to keep in mind. All right, so we've gotten 2 thumbs up. We would need at least 3 more. They're rewriting the object code of our reality. It's not really a rewriting of the object code of the reality. It's a rewriting of the overlay that we've put over the object code of the actual reality. But the actual object code is natural law. We can't change that. But we can definitely rewrite what we're doing on top of it and how we use it. That part is true. So I need at least 5 thumbs up or yeses for us to continue. Otherwise, we're going to wrap things up here just as we go in finishing up the third hour. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and then I will continue because you guys asked for it. So probably about a 5-minute break. I need to stretch my legs. Need to get some coffee. It could be up to 10 minutes. Those who are willing to wait patiently will. If you're not and you need to drop off, hey, no hard feelings. So I'm going to take a break here, and let me and I promise I'll be right back in about 5 to 10 minutes. All right, we're back. Backity back. What questions you guys have? You guys we're sticking with this. You guys are the 3-hour mark here. Appreciate that. I haven't been on a live for quite a while, so happy to spend a little extra time with y'all. So what questions do you guys have for me? In context to what we focus on at the Freedom Studio. And if you're not familiar with us, let me share that link one more time. Not the only game in town. There's actually, I've been doing some research, and there's actually quite a few maybe less well-known private associations and private organizations that are teaching similar concepts. I have not seen very many focused on natural law. I think that's a big distinction between what we do and what others do. And I think that when you focus on natural law first, you build a much stronger foundation that you can build on everything else on top of. So that's why I emphasize that so much. Coming to learn natural law was a real game changer for me in many different dimensions. And I've talked about that. I talk about that in the workshop. Just to share a little bit, it's had far-reaching implications for me, positive changes in terms of many different dimensions of my life. I wouldn't say all of them, and I'm still working on things. It's still a work in progress, but I was able to heal many addictions. I was able to improve my health. I was able to improve my lifestyle. I was able to improve my finances. I was able to improve a lot of my relationships, especially relationships with family, but in general. And I'm very grateful for the circumstances that I find myself in. I think it's much, much better. It's like orders of magnitude better than it was even a few years ago. Having said that, I feel like I'm just getting started. And that's the beautiful thing about being on this journey. There is no, as one of my mentors says often, and by the way, if you don't have at least one mentor, I highly recommend that you get one. And one of my mentors, he often says, there is no arrival point in this journey. There's no point where you say, I got it, I'm there. And anyone who tells you that, they don't get it. There is no arrival point. It's a never ending, it's an endless process of growth and upgrade. It's an endless evolution. And if anything, we're way in the beginning of the journey. Diana says, freedom, right to refuse without repercussion. Well, let's start with that part. Right to refuse without repercussion. So what do you mean by repercussion? Because that could be, because if you mean what I think you mean, you may not be fully grasping how natural law works, because there's always a consequence. For every cause, there's an effect. Go back to the Kabbalion, the fifth principle. Is it the fifth or the sixth? I think it may be the fifth. It may be the sixth, but it's the principle of cause and effect. For every cause, there is an effect. For every effect, there is a cause. You do have free will, and there's always going to be some consequence to what you do. So I can't tell you what that's going to be, but if that's what you mean by repercussion, there's always a repercussion. We're not operating in a vacuum. So I would have to clarify further what you meant by that. If you're also meaning to say, like, life, living life safely where there are no potential adverse consequences, how is that freedom? If you're shielded from certain outcomes, how are you truly free? Okay. As far as natural rights, well, we already have natural rights. It's just a matter we have to exercise them, and not to be contracted unknowingly. Okay, that's fair. in order to not contract unknowingly, you obviously have to be very discerning, but you can still contract knowingly if you choose to. In fact, I don't think there's any way to get away from contracting, because we have to make agreements. If we have free will, how are we going to do things collaboratively without agreements? I don't see how that would be possible. So how would you answer your question, Diana? If you could you be free and still work for a corporation? How would you answer it? Would you say yes or no, and why? What would be your answer? And you guys asked me to keep going, but I'm not seeing any other questions. So unless we get more questions, we're going to wrap up. Right? Because it's got to be reciprocal, and this is Q&A. So send me your questions. Send me your questions. Looks like somebody asked a question in the Telegram, so I'll go ahead and address it. Someone asked if I had started building trust credit. Trust credit, no. Business credit, yes. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but yes, I've been building business credit. Business credit is actually something I've been aware of even before I started studying natural law and learned about the nature of the banking system. That goes back way further than that. So yes, I've been doing that, and I generally consider it to be a good approach, because at least in the U.S. system, business credit is very powerful. Brent says, when you do conditional acceptances, I haven't done any conditional acceptance recently. And the main reason is because when I started learning equity and realized through equity that we already have an ability to basically, accept all of our public obligations for discharge, naturally I concluded, well, if we can just accept and return them, why do we need to do any conditional acceptance? In other words, why do we need to make things more complicated? So from that perspective, in terms of public obligations, I haven't used conditional acceptance. Now, are there cases to use conditional acceptance? Yes. Yeah, there are, but I think they're more specific, and they don't really have to do with public obligations. That's not an optimal case. So Brent goes on to say if they don't do XYZ, well, XYZ could be just about anything, right? The other thing is, are we talking about a public obligation or a private contract? Because those are two completely different scenarios. When we're talking about equitable acceptance, that's on the public side. If you have a private contract and you want to learn to bring equity, you can bring the mindset and practice of equity to a private agreement, but you're not doing equitable acceptance. You're not discharging it. You're not creating negotiable instruments. Okay, it's a different process. Okay, with equity and such, where can I learn more? All right, well, I've already answered this, but I'm happy to answer it again. So you're going to want to go to, let me share the link one more time. You want to go to thefreedom.studio, and there's a bunch of things you can do. So I'll just off the top of my head, you can join our free live workshop, the next one being on June 15th. We plan to do them about every month. That's a great foundational workshop to attend. It's free to attend. We don't charge admission. You will pay for it with your time and by paying attention. That's how you'll pay for it. You can also join our free community on Telegram. It's a private community, but it is free. We don't charge for people to attend, to join or participate. We do, as a private community, we obviously hold up to certain standards, but you're free to join. And you can consider the link in our Freedom Studio to be your invitation. You can also join our memberships. That's where you start gaining access to the actual curriculum that we teach at the Freedom Studio. So there's different levels of membership. they're priced very economically. In fact, I haven't raised the price on any of them in more than a year, and I hope to continue to do that. So if you want to invest a little more, and eventually if you want to learn, you're going to have to invest somewhere, whether it's with us or some other organization. You're going to have to start making some investments in yourself and taking that seriously. So the membership is a great place to start. And then from there, you're going to discover other ways to get more involved. So when you go to that link, sorry, I keep pointing in the wrong place. It's somewhere down there. When you go to that link and you enroll in the workshop, it'll have the date and time for the next workshop. So just go check it out there. Brent went on to clarify mostly public side. Yeah, I mean, for the public side, it's going to be 80 to 90% equity. You're not necessarily going to, there are going to probably be certain scenarios where you're not going to bring equity you're not going to attempt to do an equitable acceptance to discharge for whatever reason, but that's up to you. There are going to be certain types of presentments that are going to be easier to discharge, certain are going to require more study. So, but anything really on the public side, I would recommend committing yourself to study equity. And I think as more people learn how to bring equity, it's just going to get better for all of us. Brent says, okay, I watched a bunch of videos when you still had a conditional acceptance. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. That means you probably joined us way back in the beginning. And yeah, there's been a lot of upgrades. So welcome back. And yeah, you're definitely going to want to catch up. We've had a lot of changes. I first started studying equity intently in September of last year. So it's been about 8 or 9 months. So yeah, it's been a lot going on. So you might be catching up a little bit. That's cool. We're always upgrading our knowledge set, always acquiring new knowledge and new skills, never pausing. There is no arrival point. G Power giving us a shout out as he heads out. Good night, all. Thank you, David. Awesome. Great to have you here, G Power. Appreciate your thoughtful engagement and participation. Appreciate you. Thank you for being a great, valued member of our community. Brent, coming back to clarify, I haven't taken steps yet as far as getting passport, all those things. I'm trying to learn before I take a step in any direction. Okay. Well, that's perfectly valid to learn and study before you act. But there has to be a balance point. If it's all just study and academic and it never gets translated into any kind of action, at some point it's not valuable. So you're going to have to decide at what point it makes sense. But if you're not translating at some point into action, remember the trivium. So knowledge is just the first third of the trivium. Understanding is the second third, and wisdom. Okay. Knowledge, understanding, wisdom. So if you're just stuck at the knowledge phase, just accumulating all this knowledge and maybe some understanding, but you're not actually putting it into practice, then you've missed a third to 2/3 of what's going on. So, but only you can decide when it's the right moment to act. I would just encourage you to not make it only an academic exercise, and you may want to be mentored by someone so that you can replicate what they were able to do. And you could have more than one mentor. It doesn't have to be just one mentor. Greg saying nights. Yeah, I feel you. I appreciate that. I'm going to probably wrap up soon because I'm running out of energy. I'm starting to run out of energy a little bit after going for more than 3 hours, but it's cool. Brent says, I just started getting into this a year ago. At first, it was just scattered bits and pieces. Yeah. So what got you involved? Like, what was the initial cause point or spark of interest that got you involved? What problems or issues were you looking to solve for yourself? that got you involved in the first place. Brent says, City has been after me since 2017. Well, you're one of the unlucky few that they came back from the future to come after you. So I definitely am not enviable of your position. What have they been after you about? What will you have done in the future that they will have wanted to come after you? What will you have done in 3017? I'm just curious. If you're willing to share. I mean, it could be private. Code violations. Okay. Well, not knowing anything specific about your situation, there's a few things that you may want to look into. So not legal advice here, not legal advice, just sharing my opinion. Code violations are obviously that's happening on the public side. So we want, mastering the difference between public and private is a great starting point. So yeah, I mean, equity is probably going to be a good path because equity has a remedy for all wrongs, and equity allows you to discharge all your public obligations, teaches you how to do that. But there may still be some things you need to deal with on the private side in order to, set things right with whoever the other parties are. So without knowing more details, it's hard for me to give a more specific recommendation other than, I would tell you the same thing I would tell anyone. Study natural law first, and then consider studying equity and private trusts. Those three are going to be your powerhouse. So, but I can't, with a situation like that, you said you have some old Greyhound buses. They hate that. Yeah, it's a very, I haven't heard that situation. They tried to force me. Yeah, I mean, this is all happening on the public side. So I would learn how to bring equity to that situation. And I know you're going to say, well, what does that mean? Well, that means you have to become a student of equity, right? Because it's not just one thing. Okay. Now, some people will give you completely different advice. They'll say use conditional acceptance. They'll say, use an administrative process, which could also be very valid and could confer certain benefits in a different way. Just based on what I know, I would actually be more biased to learning equity. That's just my opinion. That's just an opinion, not legal advice. Equity is also about compelled performance. So when you get good at bringing equity, you can start to ask, when you start interfacing with these public officials, in this case from the city, you're going to be able to conduct yourself and ask better questions in order to potentially create a more favorable outcome and certainly make things easier for yourself. But that does take some time to master. The system loves it when we create controversy, because then we get ensnared in the whole system. So the goal is to learn how to take all the wind out of their sails by removing all the controversy, but still getting an outcome that's fair and balanced. Brent says, I want to move everything into trusts. Yeah, that's a great idea. If you have property of any kind that you own outright, then have it, and it has any kind of value and you want to protect it, having it in a trust is a great idea. Now, it depends on what you're going to do with it, because operating trust properly requires trust, which means you're going to have other people not related to you having control of that property, something a lot of people are not willing to do. And hey, that's going to be a stumbling block. And also, what was the second aspect of that? So trust, but also it takes there's a certain administrative overhead to running trusts. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be huge, but every trust you have is going to have a certain amount of overhead. So you're going to have to be willing to either pay others appropriately to help you manage it, or do certain work yourself. Now, you don't want to do everything. That defeats the purpose of trust, but you could still be involved. So yeah, there's a little bit of overhead, but I would recommend in that case, if you haven't gone to the workshop, check it out. But specifically for trust, we have the Trustee Network, which is one of our memberships, and it's 100% focused on how to create, establish, and operate your trusts. So that could be a good place for you to jump in if you're not already there. And it will definitely help protect, I would say it's even prior to bringing equity to a matter, it can be very helpful to have the property in question in a trust, because when you start to get obligations from the public side, if it's properly set up, they're not even going to be able to touch that properly, let alone confiscate it. But you want to have everything set up correctly. So learning to operate in trust is very powerful. Everything really is a trust. If you think about it, all of creation is a trust of sorts. And it's even without realizing it, it's one of the most common ways that we interact with each other, through trust. Because nobody's doing it all alone. We have to trust each other. We have to be able to trust other people to help us manage things. That's a big part of it. It's a big part of it. Or I should say, and we also want those trustees to operate from a high moral character, which is why knowing natural law and knowing objective morality, from my opinion, is a prerequisite for, like, if I want to hire a trustee or work with someone as a trustee, that's a prerequisite. That's a requirement. Natural law, equity, and trusts, just like we teach at the Freedom Studio. I would want them to at least be students of that, if not having achieved a certain level of mastery. All right, I'm not really getting any more questions, so we're going to wrap up here. It's 4 minutes till the hour, so we're just going to wrap up at the top of the hour. So the last 4 minutes, just to see what folks have to say. Brent says, I'm green on trust, which means that you're new to it. Sure, everybody's starting somewhere. I look at everything as a trust now. Yes, everything we're doing is trust interactions. Every person I deal with, always a trustee, beneficiary. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And, a lot of trusts are implied. They're not express trust. They're not written down. They are implied trusts. Okay, thank you for everything you do. Celebrated Razorworks, thank you. Thank you for being here and for participating. Keep sharing. Invite some people to the free workshop. Yeah, I've made the barrier of entry pretty simple for that one. Uncle Todd says, I've looked into some of the things that you and I discussed. Great. That's awesome. It's good to hear. Diana says, good night, all, and thank you. Thank you, Diana. Appreciate you. It's been good to have you with us. Marcelo asking tomorrow, I'm assuming about the workshop. No, it's on the 15th. Uncle Todd, how can we find out how much we have in our trust? Well, first of all, it's not your trust. A trust is not owned by you. Even if you help establish it, it's not owned. Trust is not owned by anyone. A trust represents a splitting of titles. So you have a legal title, which the trustees have, and you have equitable or beneficial title, which the beneficiaries have. So nobody owns the trust. So we need to get away from incorrect language about that, because it's just, as long as we say things incorrectly, we're not really grasping the concept. The workshop, yeah. So it's on the 15th, but go to the link to when you enroll. It's going to have it, and you're going to get an email with the time. So Just go to the link and sign up there. Fernando says, hello from Oakdale, California. Hello, Fernando. You're arriving at the last minute here. Although if you guys ask me some good questions, I'll keep going. It's just, I was going to wrap up because nobody's asking, very few people are asking questions. And, this has got to be reciprocal. Brent, you did ask some good questions, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And Remedy, can't imagine why you chose that name. Love from Kiwi Land. Yeah, I enjoyed visiting New Zealand when I did, which was in 2001. So it's been a few years. I would love to come back. But I definitely enjoyed visiting New Zealand, Kiwi Land, assuming that's what you're referring to. How do we know when you're going on? Well, these lives are impromptu. However, they're almost always on the weekend. However, the workshop is always scheduled. So I would just say get scheduled on the workshop. That's actually more important. Like I do these lives to just let people know about the workshop. But if you're already scheduled to come into the workshop or then you're already on the path. So don't worry about that. See you in the workshop. Oh yeah. Cheers from Australia, from down under. All right. Good day, mate. We'll see you there. All right. So ask better questions. That's been a theme. I talk about that in the workshop. Ask better questions. Let me see if I can pull up that slide. That's actually a very powerful slide. Give me a second. See if I can find that real quick here. Just bear with me. I just want to pull up this one slide. Kind of a sneak peek, as it were. I want to share this with you guys. I love this slide. The only thing is, it's not all right. Guess I'm not going to be able to share it like that. So give me a second. Present. Share screen. All right, let me see if that worked. So this is a slide from, hopefully you guys can see that. Yes, I think you can. So this is a slide from the workshop. I just wanted to share this with you guys. And it's really about asking better questions. I want to encourage you guys to ask better questions because that's where the real remedy is. And also it's going to help you and others. It's going to help all of us to level up. So what do I mean by asking better questions? When you say the question, if I read your question aloud, it should make sense. I shouldn't have to ask you to clarify. Some of you guys are using shit grammar. I don't know if that's because you're being lazy. Hopefully it's not because of a lack of knowledge of grammar, but it might be a good starting point. Remember, grammar is the first step in the trivium from the classic definition. So it is important to master that in context so you can express yourself and convey ideas clearly. Just because you know in your own head what you want to ask doesn't mean that I or someone else is going to know it. Longer isn't necessarily better, so it's good to be concise. Keep it relevant. Again, what we're talking about here, freedom, how to be free, how to free your mind, natural law, equity, private trusts. And it looks like somebody just enrolled in the workshop, so that's great. We'll see you there. And also we want to ask questions that everybody can benefit from the answers. You're not just trying to mine for information for yourself. You're actually asking questions that if more people knew the answer to, then it would be better for all of us. And also you want to demonstrate a higher order thinking. Okay. So that's what I mean by asking better questions. So I'm not just trying to pick on you guys just to be mean, but honestly, you guys could all ask better questions. You really could all ask better questions. What is Form 1099-A? It's a treasury form. Is this recorded? Yes, because it's live on different platforms, so it's being recorded. I think it'll probably be most accessible on YouTube. Some platforms, they delete the videos after a while. Remedy says it's 2 p.m. Kiwi time. So it's 10 p.m. the day before here. So I guess it would be, yeah, it's going to be early morning for you. Sorry about that. It's not going to be a fun hour, but hey, if you're committed, you're committed. Fernando says, to discharge my IRS tax, I need to send 1098. No, you do not. You don't need to use any of those forms. Completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary to use any of those forms, and I don't recommend it. You're free to do whatever you want, and some people will tell you they will recommend it, but I don't. You don't need it, especially for equity. Uncle Todd, have you ever used Form 1098? No, I have not. And now, based on what I learned from equity, I probably won't, because there's no need to, especially not when we're talking about discharge. Not that there would never, ever be a scenario to use it or not use it. And I'm not telling people don't use it, because I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying that I probably wouldn't use it because it's not necessary. And I'm always looking for the simple, elegant solution. That's how I roll. Simple, elegant, aligns with natural law. It's the right thing to do, and it's not complicating things. And it doesn't have potential to create controversy or get you into trouble unnecessarily, or have to start dealing with things that you wouldn't have to otherwise. Just complicating your life. Yeah, it's early morning there. Sorry. Aware of any good mind maps? That's a great idea. So yeah, let me just address that. So as an educator, I am always looking for more ways and better ways to convey knowledge and ideas. And I think that's a great idea that has come up a few times. And one of the things that I've been doing with the Freedom Studio as we've been building our organization is I'm much more focused on the education side. So I've kind of taken certain things off my plate that were taking up a lot of my time. And so I've been building a team. And, it's still a work in progress, but I feel like I have more time that I can invest now in the education side. So one of my objectives is to create some mind maps. So that's it. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm happy to champion that. I'm happy to take that as take that to task. In fact, let me make a note of that. That's how self-accountable I am. Like if someone gives me a task, it goes into my project management system. So let me go ahead and at least put something up there in the board. We use a system called ClickUp to run the Freedom Studio, and it's just an amazing tool. Just an amazing tool for both self-management and team management. So I'm just going to make a note here to follow up on that, just to make sure it doesn't get lost in the fray. So I appreciate that. Could you speak to how one might identify whose methods to follow? Yeah, well, the methods don't belong to anyone. If you mean whose educational materials to follow, sure. Well, I mean, obviously I'm biased because we are an education organization. So I would love for you to join us. But I'm also not competitive in the sense that if you choose to work with someone else, and that's fine. And we actually collaborate with other educators, so we've done some collaborations. So I would say for you, I would suggest you use the same criteria I do. What's the criteria I do? I'm always willing to try, if an organization is offering something out and it resonates. So first it has to resonate. It has to sound like, hey, this is something I'd even want to study. It sounds like a good idea. It aligns with my values. Then I probably just explore their free content first. But I've gotten to a point where I'm fine with making investments, because usually we make investments as an organization. So it's a good investment, because if we can keep learning and growing collectively, or as an organization, we're going to be able to keep putting out cutting edge material. So, I will sometimes enroll in other people's classes just to vet them. And, but really I can't answer that for you specifically. You have to see what resonates. You would have to see what resonates. Simple and elegant, isn't that the same as quick and easy? No, it isn't. They're not the same thing. They are not the same thing. And folks who are looking for quick and easy usually are not, you're not going to get huge value out of what we do at the Freedom Studio, because we are about going deep and doing the real work. So, there are educators, gurus, influencers out there who are preaching the quick win. But that's not us. That's not the Freedom Studio. Fernando asks, oh, you guys kept me going here. I was about to quit on the live, but you guys started asking some questions. So there you go. Ask and ye shall receive. Fernando asks, after opening a revocable trust, what's the next step? Well, first of all, the next step to what? And secondly, if you're asking that question, you probably haven't gone deep enough into your study. So my suggestion is get a curriculum. So again, it doesn't have to be our courses, but whether it's us or another education institution, get into an institution where they are teaching natural law and or equity and or private trusts, and start to follow the curriculum of whatever organization you study with, whether it's us or someone else. And of course, we'd love to have you with us, but I'm not gonna hate on you if you decide to study in someone else's academy. Okay. But there is no, I'm not going to give you I'm just going to throw out, here's the next step. That's meaningless. You're on a path. You need to be on a path of study. Okay. You need to commit to it. So many people here, and I don't think it's all of you here, but people come in, they're like looking for the quick and easy, quick and dirty, just give me a push button solution. And that mindset is part of what's keeping you enslaved. That mindset of I just need a quick and easy win is part of what keeps you enslaved to the system. The system loves it when you think that way. The system loves you to think that way, because it makes you into the perfect slave. You're the perfect slave when you think that way. And then you just tend to pull other people into that same direction, through influence, because we're all influencing people around us, whether it's at the family or interpersonal. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. As always, appreciate having you here. You're welcome at any time. Fernando said, I've been following you for a minute. I'm going to stay here. Yeah, I'm going to push as far as I can, but I have an upper limit myself. We're going on almost 4 hours here, and I'm happy to do it, but I'm probably not going to be able to go, that past the 4th hour, because I'm going to run out of steam here. So, but happy to do it. Happy to spend time with y'all. As long as you keep asking good questions. That's the only criteria. That's how you pay for this content. Your payment is to ask better questions. And if not, hey, we can say good night. We can catch up a different time. Fernando says more coffee. Yeah, it's a little bit late. If I drank coffee now, I'd be up, I'm bouncing around all night. Well, maybe not all night. I have been able to fall asleep after drinking coffee. It just depends on how exhausted I am. Honestly, between you and me, I'm probably going to do a light workout after this, because when I have a lot of energy, if I don't exhaust myself, it's hard for me to fall asleep. So I'm probably going to just do some like a high intensity workout, body weight, just to blow off a little bit of steam and get those endorphins going, get that good feeling, to make me a little sleepy, perhaps, or if not, whenever it happens, no biggie. But yeah. Last call for questions. Last call for questions. Drop some emoji love in the chat if this is the first time you've ever watched any of our content, or if you're brand new, like maybe you just found us this week or pretty recently. Would be very curious to hear. Connectropy is turning towards connectedness. Very interesting subject there. Thanks again, David. Appreciate you. Appreciate that. Good to have you with us. We are in this together. We got to have each other's backs. Looks like somebody else just enrolled in the workshop. That's awesome. I get notified when people enroll, so appreciate that. Look forward to seeing you guys at that workshop. And thank you, Marcelo. Appreciate that. Hope to see you at the workshop as well. We'll probably wrap up here in a minute, just if we don't have any more questions coming through. And I'm kind of running out of steam. I haven't been drinking coffee this late at night. So it's all good, though. It's all good. I'm not complaining. But yeah, it definitely takes energy to do this. And depends on the questions you guys ask, right? Because it's Q&A. So it's really for your benefit. What are some of the topics you'll be going over in the next workshop? Yeah, that's a great question. It is covered on the enrollment page. I share a lot, but at a very high level, we typically cover 5 topics. So first, we cover natural law. And the reason I do that is because natural law is among the most occulted knowledge on the planet. It's yet at the same time, it's readily accessible for those who are ready to learn it. And so for me, I consider it the game changer, because when essentially it's leveling the playing field. Because if the power differential comes largely from the fact that when I say you, I don't necessarily mean you, Uncle Todd, but you typically, many people are ignorant of natural law, meaning they could know it, but they don't. And it's somewhat comprehensible just based on the fact it's not taught in most schools. So my objective, first and foremost, as an educator, is to teach it. Now, in one workshop, you're only going to get an introduction. You're not going to go deep into it. However, in my experience, it's usually enough to open the door to further study, and it makes a difference. So topic number 1, natural law. And topic number 2 is I do a high-level introduction to the what I call the debt slave system, or the banking system of control, the matrix, however you want to call it. Goes by many different names. and just understanding how the system is constructed, knowing natural law, and basically using our ignorance of natural law against us. So how do they get us to enslave ourselves through our own free will consent? That's the trick, right? The sorcerer's trick, the magician's trick. So we take a look at it from a very high-minded perspective. So that's the second topic, right? We don't go deep into the mechanics of it. We don't go deep into QSIP numbers and how they're hypothecating the bonds in the back end and how the OC10 window works. We don't do any of that. We just look at it from a high level. The third topic is called the remedy. So now we know what the slave system looks like. So what's the remedy? And I approach it, again, from a holistic perspective, from natural law, and also a very practical perspective. And I'm not going to reveal too much because it's part of the secret sauce of the workshop, but I give you some surprising perspectives on remedy and what that actually means. Okay, so that's the second topic. Sorry, I got distracted by something. And the third topic was remedy. The fourth topic is equity. So many people are asking about equity and wanting to understand it, and how to take advantage of it. So equity is, an introduction to equity is the fourth topic. And then the fifth topic is private irrevocable trust. Again, equity and trust law are very closely related. Equity can be used, and can, and I would say should be used a lot with trust. So they're very closely linked in that regard. So the fifth and last topic is we talk about the power of trust and how you can use it to protect your assets, operate privately, start building family generational wealth, and just generally acquire and protect the resources you need to operate your big mission in life, whatever that is. So those are the 5 topics we cover. Now, in one workshop, it's all going to be introductory. So we're not going to be able to go deeper than a certain level with any of those topics. However, again, it's going to give you a much better introduction to all of them than you would normally get. And it's going to create a great launch pad or starting point of initiation for you to move forward in your study. Fernando says, I'm going to start my research. Thank you, David. Awesome. Great to see you, Fernando, and keep up the good work. Uncle Todd says, is there a link between Masonic law and natural law? What do you mean by Masonic law? Natural law is just refers to the spiritual laws that are in effect in creation. So we can really call them anything we want. I mean, someone could call it Masonic law. They could call it God's law. They could call it karma. It has been called many things. How you call it is less important than knowing what it is. And it is nothing other than the actual built-in laws that were put in place by the creator of this universe, not by us. And they are always in effect, and they're always governing the consequences of how we choose to act. That there's no way around that. So what you call them that's up to you. But that's much less important than what they actually are. Great work, David. To tanks, huh? We rolling out the tanks? Does our heritage have anything to do with natural law? I have no idea what you're asking. I don't know what the point of your question is. I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but what exactly are you asking? I just explained what natural law is, and you can start your study on it and discover if it has to do with our heritage, if it has to do with Masonic law. I mean, go study it. I'm not going to spoon feed you all the answers. Go explore it for yourself. See what's up. I've dropped the hints. I've shared a lot. I've made it as clear as possible that this is a game changer, but you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, you You could not do anything with it. That's totally cool. That's up to you. You have free will. So go explore natural law for yourself. I recommend, for those who haven't read it, I recommend reading the Kybalion. We also talk about that during the workshop, a little bit of a spoiler. And but there are many traditions that explore natural law. And actually, Freemasonry, which gets a bad rap probably because it has largely been infiltrated. But original esoteric Freemasonry is really a tradition on study of natural law. And it's not necessarily for evil. I mean, it can be weaponized, and it looks like it largely has been. But the original esoteric study, just like the tarot, just like a lot of these other traditions, it's really just seeking to interface with natural law and understand it and how we can apply it in our lives. That's all. Looks like somebody else just enrolled in the workshop. That's awesome. We're getting a bunch of enrollments now. I really appreciate that. Looks like since we started live, we've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 enrollments. That's great. Look forward to having you guys at the workshop. It's going to be fun. And since it'll be in the daytime, I'll probably be drinking some coffee, so I'll keep it lively. I'm not going to doze off on y'all. I promise to keep it lively the whole time. Hope you got some value from this. Oops, looks like I wonked out for a minute there. Someone might have been trying to interfere with my broadcast, but hopefully we're still good to go here. All right, but almost wrapping up here. Winding down. Appreciate you guys. And for those of you who have enrolled or will, I will look forward to seeing you at the workshop. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a great, great event. If you were at the first one in May, it's going to be, our objective is to make it even better every time. We really take all the feedback that you guys give to heart, and we look to implement and just make it better every time. So hopefully you guys will get a chance to join us. So I appreciate everyone. Appreciate you for joining. We'll call it a wrap for this live Q&A. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. Thank you to all the haters and trolls. We only had a few trolls come in, one in the very beginning, which was kind of funny, how they show up right on time. But for the most part, you guys have been top notch, and I appreciate everyone. And I look forward to seeing you guys very soon. So everybody have a really great evening, and we'll talk to you all soon.